welcome to Eurosport's Super Racing Weekend. We're live from Monza, the FIA GT race, the central attraction in this first of 10 Super Race weekends. Yesterday we saw qualifying, the Super Pole shootout and the Formula Renault 2000 race. And today we'll be taking in the highlights of the FIA GTs and the two Super Touring and single Super Production race. Well, the Grand Prix circuit at Monza, of course, a well-known track, bathed in spring sunshine for this opening Super Race weekend. We'll bring you the start of the FIA GT race in just a moment. And when we've dealt with the FIA GTs, we'll be moving on to the Super Tourers and the Super Productions later on this afternoon. But stay with us as we rejoin you live in a moment from beautiful sunny Monza.
The FIA GT Championship in Eurosport's Super Racing Weekend. With LeasePlan, fleet management in motion. Filatice, stretching fibers, fabrics and yarns.
Eurosport live from Monza for the opening race in the FIA GT Championship, part of our new television package, the Super Racing Weekends. Good afternoon, I'm Martin Haven. Alongside me, I'm delighted to say David Leslie, and David will be giving us his expertise. The man on pole position for this opening race, Christophe Bouchou, winning the first ever Super Pole shootout for GT cars in his Labra competition Viper. Let's hear from him now.
Christophe Bouchou on pole position. You've been very quick in all the qualifying sessions and in the practices. You must be confident for the race.
Yes, absolutely. Even if for us, for the lab competition, the car is really new and we have not a lot of information because it's the first year we improved the Viper car. But we are really confident. The car is very quick, and we have a very good crew and a good teammate too. So everything for the moment working very well. And but now it's a race, and that is more important than the race. So I hope everything will work very well.
Bouchou, an ex-Mercedes FIA GT star, recently the Labra competition team have been running in the NGT class with their Porsches. They continue to do that, but stepping up to the big class with the Viper. And Jean-Philippe Belloc last year driving for this team, Paul Belmondo Racing. Vincent Voss and Boris de Richebourg, the fastest of their three cars, and Belmondo again showing a three-car contribution to the championship. Those Vipers certainly quick in qualifying, but possibly hampered during the race by the use of Dunlop tyres as opposed to the more favoured Michelins. But David Leslie, a very strong driver lineup, and we've seen over the last two seasons the Belmondo team cars rarely fail mechanically. Perhaps their Achilles heel is likely to be the Dunlop tyre combination.
They've got a really good package. When you see them in the pit lane, they turn up with really nice trucks, and they turn out a very good package full stop. Their cars are well prepared, and you know they've got enough spares to look after the cars if something goes wrong. One on this weekend is a gearbox problem. They've had like 3 gearboxes now in this car. They've got all the spares, all the people, everything necessary to make sure those cars go the full distance every time. So every time they're going to be always there, while the rest of the people have their little problems here, little problems there. They may not be the quickest car on the circuit, but certainly will be there at the finish and scoring points on every meeting.
Well, we saw dramas in qualifying and again in the morning warm-up for the reigning champion team, Lister. Lister Storm's first and second fastest in the free practice, but David, again, when it came to qualifying, the Listers had problems. Jamie Campbell-Walter's car wouldn't run cleanly in qualifying, so he failed to get a Super Pole chance. Julian Bailey in the number 2 car, the other guy who won the Drivers' Championship last year with Jamie, his car ran well enough to get him into the Super Pole chance, but he didn't even get a run in Super Pole because they had a technical problem on that car.
Yeah, they seem to be dogged by stupid problems that are hurting them. They've got quick cars. The cars went very well. When they had the 15-minute practice session, Jamie went out in his Lister and went quicker than anyone had been all weekend. So he was quite capable of doing a good time, but because of a problem early on, they're now going to be 13th on the grid. The top 12 cars from the Super Pole are all in front of him, and because Julian didn't get to run with his car in the Super Pole, he's now going to be sitting in 12th place on the grid. So two cars that should have been on the front two rows of the grid are now sitting side by side halfway down.
But in fact, drama in the last minutes of forming up onto the grid, because Julian Bailey's car, which didn't get its Super Pole run on Saturday because of a cracked bell housing, that's been replaced. But in the morning warm-up, it was his teammate Nicholas Springer, one of the main men in the team setup, as well as one of the two drivers, who was driving the car, and it developed a high-end misfire. And in fact, Bailey's car, the number 2 Viper, Lister, has not made it out onto the grid, so we will be down to one Lister Storm. Jamie Campbell-Walter will now start in 12th place with a hole effectively in front of him where his teammate should have been, but ahead of him will be the top 5 GT cars and the top 6 NGT cars, because all of the 6 fastest cars in both classes went into the Super Pole, and the Super Pole runoff decided the top 12 places on the grid. So for those 6 GT cars, you can see being led by the Labra competition Porsche there behind the sway, the Belmondo Vipers. They have now got a bunch of fast-moving GT cars led by Jamie Campbell-Walter. There he is. Well, Julian Bailey on the warm-up lap. Bailey, in fact, peeling off into the pits shortly after the warm-up lap took place. Now you can see the grid line-up rolling down there. We've got a number of newcomers to the championship. The FIA GT Series rebounding after the domination of Mercedes in the 1998 championship almost killed the series off. But now it's an entirely privateer championship, and more cars coming into the category. And David, with the chance for prolonged live pan-European exposure on TV, I'm sure a lot of drivers have been able to persuade major sponsors to bring them in, and that can only be healthy for the championship. Of course, a packed grid with some 32 starters. We've lost, in fact, 3 or 4 cars from the GT category. The 2 Carsport Holland cars won't start, and neither will the Vief Ferrari or 2 of the Vipers. But we'll cover that in just a moment. Monza, the venue for the first Eurosport Super Racing weekend, the opening round of, among other things, the 2001 FIA GT Championship, and it's that race that we will concentrate on first on this gloriously sunny Sunday afternoon. Martin Haven in the chair alongside me, voice of reason, David Leslie. David, you've been experienced in touring cars and in sports car racing. You've had trips in both these types of cars to Monza. It's not the most complicated race car course, but for the guys in the Porsches in the middle of this top half dozen cars here, the start is going to be very tricky, with the faster GT cars trying to wend their way through them right down to the first chicane.
You can see the start right now, and the drivers talked amongst themselves beforehand, and nobody wants to have an accident to the first corner. So the little NGT cars are just going to be that little bit more cautious. They're going to let the quicker cars past. We can see them now. There's 4 of them there in front of the blacklist, and the Ferrari number 5, I think it is, right behind them there. And you can see as they accelerate out, they're just so much quicker. And here we are inside one of the Ferraris, and they're just accelerating past these Porsche GT cars like they're not there in a different race. In actual fact, overall they are a little bit slower, probably something like 5 or 6 seconds. But in reality, you know, the braking on the little Porsches is very, very good. We're getting a quick shot now of the Lister that came into the pits just as we've seen the start of the race. One of them pulled off into the pits. So obviously they've got a recurring problem from whatever it was this morning that was holding them back.
Well, that's the Julian Bailey car going in. Jamie Campbell-Walter, headlights ablaze. He's got the Emanuele Naspetti Ferrari. In front of him, he's got the second of the Ferraris, the Gabriele Raffanelli run cars. Martin Duez behind him, that's the second of the red Ferraris there, the 550 Maranellos. And in the inset picture, you can see that it's glum faces in the Lister garage, and they're not working on that number 2 car, so that is out of the race. Jamie Campbell-Walter now carrying the hopes of Lister. Behind there, you can see the darker of those cars. That's the former French GT champion, Jean-Pierre Jarier, sharing with Francois Lafont in their Art Racing Viper, and that car qualifying inside the top 10 in the GT class could be a factor as long as Jarier is at the wheel. Lafont, it is, I think, only fair to say, a real gentleman driver as opposed to an outright paceman. But the man out front is Christophe Bouchou, ex-Works Mercedes star and a very quick peddler of GT cars indeed. The Labra competition car, he said, was quite superb, although they've had precious little wet weather free testing, precious little dry running, in fact. Bouchy says the team have done a great job to build and set up the car ready for the first round of the championship. And behind them, the 3 blue and yellow cars, the Belmondo cars in formation, the 3 of them, 11, 10 and then 12 in that order. Anthony Kumpen in the number 10 car in the middle of the 3 there, looking to try and make a move. His teammate right ahead, the 11 car, Didier Dufourny. The Belgian, in fact, the 12 car ahead is Boris de Richebourg. De Richebourg on his 3rd replacement gearbox of the weekend for the start of the race, broke another one in the warm-up, having broken 2 in practice and in qualifying on Friday and Saturday. Jamie Campbell-Walter now right behind them. So within a lap and a half, the GT cars have dispensed with the lead, half a dozen NGT cars. And one of Jamie's worries going into the first turn at Monza here was that although the Lister would be able to power past some of the Porsches in a straight line, they do brake slightly later than the heavier GT cars, and he was worried that somebody might get very brave and come back down past him and therefore trigger off a problem. He said, I'm going to be very ginger in the first lap, and that has proved to be wise advice. Now he's passed both of the Ferraris, so one was behind him. He's now passed Emanuele Naspetti's Ferrari, which is the lead of the 2 red cars. And David, it looks as though the Lister is as fast as it showed in the untimed sessions, bizarrely for Jamie Campbell-Walter, because as you mentioned, in the 15 minutes after Superpole, when Tom Coronel, Jamie's teammate, went out, it set the fastest laps of the weekend, and again in the warm-up, comfortably the quickest car. So the Lister didn't manage to produce the goods for Superpole, but more importantly, seems to be able to produce them now in the early stages of the race.
Yeah, he certainly made a good start. He's been very cautious on the first couple of laps to get through all those NGT cars, those Porsches. And once he's through there, he's now concentrating on getting through the cars that he's racing against. He's got these 3 Belmondo cars. One he's just got past now, he's got another 2 in front of him. And he'll work away and get through them, I'm sure. And he'll work his way up to the front. He knows he's got a long time to do this. This race is 3 hours long, and he can take his time and he can build on it. He doesn't have to do it all in the first 15 minutes. If you try and do that, you usually make a mistake somewhere. And I spoke to Jamie beforehand, and he knows he's got a long time to do it. He knows the car's good, and as we've seen before, it was just so easy for them to do a time and in the warm-up and things like that. So they're happy. They're unhappy at the starting position they had, but they're happy they've got a really good car for the race. And they're going to concentrate on just whittling their way through the race bit by bit to get through all those cars.
And Jamie, still a young driver, but a very experienced one in sports cars, both in Britain and now in the FIA series. And of course with Julian Bailey, the reigning drivers' champions, Lister the champion team from last year's season. Now the team that ran them closest in both titles, right down to the final round at Magny-Cours, was the Carsport Holland setup, which was Mike Hazeman's and his father Twan Hazeman's running their Viper. Now they've got a pair of heavily modified Vipers here at Monza, but neither of them, David, making the grid, because one of the modifications they made was to put the oil system from under the bonnet into the back of the car, and apparently the oil pumps just couldn't cope with the length of piping to the front of the car. They blew one engine in both of their cars in Friday's wet practice, despite them never having had a problem with it in their limited so far testing this year. The engine that they brought down overnight at great expense from Heinemada's works in Switzerland failed to even start in the Hazeman's car for Saturday's qualifying session, so £75,000 of engine bills worse off. They haven't even got to the grid for the first race. That's a tough act to try and deal with from race 1 in.
It is. That's absolutely devastating. A team came here on top of the world. They did so well last year. They've gone out and they've modified the car themselves to try and make it that much better rather than use a standard car. But unfortunately, some of those modifications didn't work. And when you take an oil tank from the front of one of these cars, these are big cars, and move it all the way to the back, that's a lot of piping, that's a lot of oil, extra oil you've got to put in there, and you've got to move it around. And by the sound of it, it sounds like it wasn't moving around very well. They did change it and put the oil tank back in the front, but unfortunately, as you said, the engine that arrived didn't actually start. So therefore, they were out altogether, and we've lost 2 cars that we would expect to be right here at the front in the race that we're following at the moment.
Lost a couple of Vipers from the GT class, as I mentioned earlier. The GLPK car had a problem on Saturday and didn't do qualifying. The Racing Box car was crashed on the first lap of this morning's warm-up and destroyed. But let's hear now from Julian Bailey.
Julian, you must be very disappointed. Can you tell us exactly what the problem is, please?
Well, we've had a few problems with fuel all weekend, and in the warm-up this morning we had a misfire start again. and it's basically making the engine run lean, and it's misfiring, and it really was a bit of a risk to take the start, risk the car, and risk, obviously I was in front of Jamie. We decided to, rather than blow the engine and maybe get in Jamie's way, we had to call it a day and save it for another day.
But you must be disappointed the first race of the season. It's not the best of starts that you could have hoped for.
No, it's not, but the important thing is the car is very quick, and the chassis is fantastic, the engine's going well. We just had a few problems, but signs are encouraging that the car's going to be good for the whole year.
Thank you, Julian.
And David, those encouraging signs being shown there by Jamie Campbell-Walter as Julian Bailey was talking, diving down deep under braking inside the number 10 Paul Belmondo car of Anthony Kumpen, and picking up a spot there. He's up into third place now, one Belmondo Viper and the Labra competition Viper, which is starting to stretch away in front. Now, we talked to Jamie before the race, and he was suggesting that the Michelin-shod tyres, Michelin-shod cars like the Lister and like the Labra Viper would, within 10 laps or so, have a performance advantage over the Belmondo cars, but it doesn't seem to have taken that long. The Lister is working its way up the order. That's a lap out of date. He's passed Kumpen already. He's right on the heels of Vincent Voss, and he's really putting in a move down to the Variante Ascari. Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Lister Storm, the only car from Lister in the race at the moment, between the second and fourth place Belmondo Vipers. And the Dunlop tyres of the Belmondo cars performing well in these early laps, but the general feeling is that they will start to give up performance to the Michelins, which traditionally remain much more consistent throughout their runs after 10 or so laps. But it doesn't look as though tyres are going to be what is the deciding factor here, because Jamie Campbell-Walter has got a clear speed advantage and possibly a little bit of a handling advantage as well over those Vipers, David.
He has. You can see when he came out of that last corner, the parabolic to come onto the straight, he came out really tight. He came out round the inside, and that left him on the inside all the way up the straight until he got to the first chicane. And when you watch him around the rest of the circuit, it's the same thing. He doesn't use all the corners, all the curb, and he can make that car work so much better, look after his tyres, look after the fuel consumption, and he can still that bit quicker, and that's him now past all those Belmondo Vipers. And he's got the lead car, the Labra car driven by Christopher Bouchot, in front of him, so now he's a little bit behind that, and he's got to buckle down and concentrate on driving well, not making any mistakes, and he'll hopefully try and reel that car in, and then we can have a real battle for first, having worked his way up all the way from 13th on the grid to second in quite a short time.
One of the important things, of course, for him is not to boil the tyres now in these early laps, because if he does so, if he kills them early on, he's still got to last the best part of 50 minutes in this car on half-dead tyres, and any good work there, as you say, 13th to second in the first 3 or 4 laps is some progress. Don't call this a walkover for the Lister Storm yet, though, because certainly the Labra competition Viper is within half a second a lap or so of Jamie's speed at the moment, and they are both down under the 1 minute 50 lap times. Both Christophe Bouchot and Jamie Campbell-Walter lapping quicker than anything else on the track, and as a result, Bouchot starting to stretch away, as is Campbell-Walter now, from the trio of Belmondo Vipers. A little bit of inter-Nissan rivalry as they have swapped positions now for third and fourth places. And the Ferraris, the two Raffinelli cars, Emanuele Naspetti dropped his car off the road in Superpole. There he is, the first of the red Ferraris. But it turns out that despite his spin out of the Parabolica, or midway through the Parabolica, he hadn't in fact flat spotted the tyres, because all the drivers nominate one set of tyres for Superpole if they happen to get in it. The drivers that use them have done 3 laps on them. The drivers that don't do Superpole have a brand new set for the race. But it does mean that if you, like Naspetti, lose the car in Superpole and really flat spot your tyres, then you're left with a real dilemma at the start of the race. Now, we've had a couple of emails in. Incidentally, if you want to contact us, the car guys, all one word, at Eurosport.com, please do so. Give us your hints, suggestions, questions or criticisms. One of them from one of our younger viewers wanted to know why David isn't driving. We'll get to that one later on, David, I think. But question here, David saying, the GT cars running a 3-hour race, perhaps a little bit much to ask them to make a special setup or use special tyres for the Super Pole, and wouldn't it be better perhaps to have the Super Tourers in Super Pole? Now, you've got experience of doing Super Pole in Super Touring. I don't think you enjoyed it enormously, did you?
No, we had to do it the same as these guys. We had to do it with cold tyres, and on some of the very short circuits we used in Britain, that was quite difficult to try and get heat into it. We would sometimes have to alter the car quite dramatically to get heat into the tyres. Here at Monza, we've got a very long circuit, and there's sufficient time to get that heat in. But you're doing a total of one timed lap. So you've got out lap, which is going slowly, trying to warm the tyres up. You've got one timed lap, and you've got in lap, which you can take at whatever pace you want. So you're not exactly wearing your tyres out before you start a major race. So I don't see any problems in using the same tyres. You're not going to go and try and do something stupid like fit on a set of qualifying tyres and do Super Pole and expect to start an endurance race. We are in endurance racing, and the tyres here have got to last approximately 1 hour, which is the length of time a tank full of fuel lasts. So therefore they're going to fit on race tyres when they go out and do that Super Pole, the same as they do most of the time when they're qualifying. And they're going to last that time, and as long as you don't spin, and we've seen one spin there, he was lucky to get away with not actually damaging the tyres. We asked the team manager, Mr. Raffinelli, and he was very pleased that the tyres came back in one piece and they weren't going to cause him a problem. And we've seen from the start of the race here, the car is working very well.
Looking now at the battle for the lead of the NGT class. These cars are GT3R Porsches by and large. With the exception of 2 Ferrari 360 Modenas, the entire class looks like this car, not in the same colours, you understand, but largely like this car. Luca Riccatelli, one of the fastest of the drivers. He was the man who took the Super Pole for the NGT class, and at the moment he's deep in battle with Jürgen von Gartzen. He's in the Labra competition car. That's the red, white and black machine, and right behind him, looking for third place in the class, is another of the GT3R Porsches, the 54 Art Engineering car, and that was driven in Super Pole by Fabio Babini. He is the guy who started that. So don't forget, there are 2 races going on here, as we're used to seeing in endurance racing. The GT cars, which are effectively to GT2 specification, as was, and the GT3R Porsches and the 2 Ferrari 360 Modenas, which are in the NGT class. And those half dozen fastest NGT cars who shot in Super Pole got a position on the top 12 on the grid. As we've seen now, the faster GT cars have worked their way through them, but the NGT battle is going to be just as ferocious this year, I'm sure, as it was last year when Christophe Bouchou won that title with the Labra competition team. And this is the Proton Engineering car in the GT class, another Porsche, so looks outwardly fairly similar, but that's a GT2 spec Porsche. And the 8th car, Proton Engineering, running it again for, not this year, Gerald Reed, but his son Christian Reed, Mauro Casadei and Luca Pazzaglia. The 2 Raffinelli Ferrari 550 Maranellos, thumping over the curbs there, Emanuele Naspetti. Naspetti enjoying his first drive in this Ferrari Maranello. Last year's cars run by First Racing really had a hideous selection of new car problems all the way through the year. But Raffinelli, perhaps with the extra experience, the extra backup, the extra design and testing ability, seems to have done a very good job with these cars straight out of the box.
Raffinelli have always done a good job with any cars that they've ever looked after, and it's the same now. They've chosen the Ferrari 550 to enter into this championship, and they've built 2 very good cars. They've got some extremely good drivers out there, and you can see them really hitting those curbs hard. I must admit, the drivers are pushing very hard in those Ferraris, and in an endurance race you really would like to try and drive not quite so hard, not hit the curbs so hard, try and look after the suspension, try and look after the wheel bearings, and make the thing last. But here they are pushing at the beginning of the race, and they're in, if I work it out, 6th and 7th place, and they're doing very well. Last year the cars had a lot of problems and they didn't really get very far, but they're looking an awful lot better this year.
Here is our race leader then, and obvious signs of the power of that 8-litre V10 Chrysler motor, sliding the Labra competition Viper out of that reprofiled first chicane. The Variante Goodyear now, not a left-right, or right-left, as it used to be, a 4-stage element. It's now just hard right and hard left, and then back onto the throttle, and through here, through the Rivazza, the second Variante. and then heading off towards the Lesmos. Jamie Campbell-Walter behind him. We had a quick onboard shot from Jamie with the sunshine glaring in on the camera. Hard to tell just how close he was, but now you can see him behind Bouchou. And Bouchou sliding around a little there through the first Lesmo, using all the roads, using all the curves. And we were talking earlier before the start of the race, the Vipers with this phenomenally torquey GM motor, the Chrysler motor, not GM rather, the Chrysler motor, able to go through the corners a gear higher than any of the other GT rivals. And that means that theoretically, at least, I guess you're not stressing the motor so much, you're not stressing the gearbox so much, and perhaps that's part of the reason that Chrysler Vipers really don't have a big record of breaking down.
It is. If you can look after the car, if you can do less revs, if you can do better fuel consumption, which also enjoys having less revs, having a gear higher all the time, then that's good for the car and good for the race. And they've been able to use that to their advantage over the years. People are slowly catching up with them at the moment. We can see the Lister is one of those cars. It did well last year because it managed to win the championship, but they've got a lot more revs on their car and more power rather than actual torque. But the torque of that V10 motor in the Viper is just absolutely phenomenal. It comes out, it doesn't have a lot of revs on, and it just purrs away as it simply accelerates at a phenomenal pace out of these very tight corners. You can see this new chicane here at Monza, very, very tight, and they're real low in the gears that are going through there. And you can see Jamie from in-shot camera here changing up through the gears one after the other, all the way up from second to fifth.
Now, sequential gearbox on the V12 engine Lister Storm. As you can see, Jamie just pulling the lever back there to change up, pushing it forward to change down. Something we're very familiar with seeing in Super Tours, but not all the Vipers use it. Some of the Vipers are still using a normal road car style H-pattern gearbox for their 5-speed gearbox. Some of them using a sequential box. Now, with a higher revving multi-valve engine like the V12, the Jaguar, the 4-valve engine, perhaps a sequential gearbox is more necessary than it might be in a slightly lazier lump like the Viper engine.
That may be so, but at the end of the day, the sequential gearbox in motor racing now is definitely the thing to have. And I really can't understand it, because some of the cars have got it. I mean, the Team Art car, Viper, driven by Jean-Pierre Jarier, it has the sequential gearbox. Now then, if I had a Viper, I would have to have that sequential gearbox, because I know just how much easier it is. Not only on the gearbox, it just so much less happened. But at the moment we can see a car going on fire here.
Yeah, Jürgen von Gartzen in trouble in the number 51 car. This was our NGT leader. Now, that looked as though that might have been a blown turbo initially, but you don't normally see lots of flames with blown turbo. And yes, David's pointing the screen, something gushing out of the front. Is that, well, that's where the fuel cells and the radiators are, so it could be either, well, it could be fuel pouring out if he's blown a fuel line somewhere. Maybe that would be the return from the injection system or something, but he's well ablaze now.
I would sincerely hope that he's run over something and it's water, because he's a very sensible driver. He's driven the car all the way to a marshal's post where there's a fire extinguisher, and they've been able to get at the thing very quickly and put it out. He's got out the car now. We've struggled to get the wire out for the speaker system for the helmet that's in there. Give instructions to the marshal just how to make sure it's out. So I would hope very much so that was water coming out the front and not fuel. Had it been fuel, I think the fire could have been an awful lot bigger.
I think they wouldn't have put it out yet, and there's somebody else has gone off as well, so he has been dropping liquid on the circuit. The radiators in the nose, 3 of them in the nose of the 911 GT3Rs, are 1 in the centre and 2 on either corner, so just the slightest knock with somebody can occasionally do that kind of damage. And it's one of the blue and white Art Engineering Porsches. That's the 53 car, and I think Andrea Bertolini started that one. No, in fact, Alberto Radelli. So Radelli running out of the gravel traps. Cameron needs to pull back a little bit before we can find where that is. Is that the exit of one of the Lesmos?
I'm not sure. It's certainly a very large gravel trap wherever it is, and he's a long way in there. He's obviously just simply lost control on the way in, and they've got some very big gravel traps here at Monza. Very, very fast circuit.
I wonder if he found a little bit of von Gartzen's fluids that didn't seem to have been involved with anybody else in that incident. So drama in the NGT class. Christophe Bouchou leads 11 laps in the GTs and overall from Jamie Campbell-Walter by just a fraction under 3 seconds, with the Belmondo Vipers 3rd, 4th and now 6th place as the Ferrari moves up into 5th position. Beautiful Monza bathed in sunshine, the Alps in the background, the National Park at Monza, all around this historic racetrack. And from the 1920s, the banked oval circuit, and a fearsome circuit it is, to the modern Grand Prix track, so well known from your Formula One television. And here is our race leader, just some 25 minutes, 30 minutes nearly into the race. Christophe Bouchou leading from pole position in the Labre competition. Viper, oh, and drama as Bouchou miscues at the Variante Goodyear, the first chicane at the end of the long front straight, and Jamie Campbell-Walter now jumps into the lead. Now, David, Campbell-Walter snaffling the lead there from Bouchou. He was just about 2 seconds behind. Bouchou comes back in front, but Bouchou miscuing as he caught some slower traffic, and that's always a problem with the closing speeds of these faster cars on the NGT machines.
It is. Just as we caught the glimpse of the camera there, we discovered that there was some slower cars in front of him, and he's obviously locked up and missed the chicane going in. That allowed Jamie to get past him, and now they've repassed.
Christian Pescatori retiring the 62 Ferrari. Pescatori, the reigning sports racing champion, and now come to the FIA GT Championship with the JMB GS Ferraris and the JMB car that he was sharing with David Terrian out of the race as Jamie Campbell-Walter leads into the first set of pit stops, but Bouchou stopping early before the Lister Storm, and this was always Lawrence Pierce's tactic. He said, we'll leave Jamie out there until the next fastest car, which they figured would be the Labre car, stops, and then we'll bring him in. And that's exactly what happened. Now, we worked out while we were doing our arithmetic that you lose over 2 minutes on a pit stop, but Jamie Campbell-Walter came out 17 seconds ahead of Christophe Bouchou's car, and Tom Coronel was in the car at that stage. Well, that was after the first pit stops. Coronel did a blinding second stint with laps down at qualifying pace for a fairly large percentage of it to hand over the lead back to Jamie Campbell-Walter at their second stop. Campbell-Walter is now on board the car. He is currently leading the race by 28.5 seconds from Christophe Bouchou, who is now back in the Labre competition Viper. Bouchou had handed over mid-race to his teammate Jean-Philippe Belloc, and Belloc, a former driver in the Belmondo squad last year, has also done a good middle stint with that car, keeping the gap constant and certainly not being destroyed by the speed of the Lister Storm. So Lister leading. That brings us on rather nicely actually to one of our email questions. If you want to ask us what's going on, or have questions that you want to ask, the car guys at Eurosport.com. David Hodgson wants to know, David, how is it that Ferrari and Chrysler provide cars for customers, but Lister, in brackets, he says the best package, doesn't?
Well, that's the fact they do, but they don't supply to anyone in the European Championship. They have only a limited number of cars available, and those cars that they've supplied so far are in the British GT Championship and the Spanish GT Championship. So while we don't see them on this particular race, they are out there somewhere.
So Lister, you can go and get one, but it will be run by Lawrence Pierce for you. And that is very much the situation with those cars. The Vipers you can buy, of course, built by the Orica team, and then you can buy the second-hand ones as well and get them run by whoever you like. So the stage of the race at the moment with just 10 laps remaining. Jamie Campbell-Walter leading by 29.5 seconds from Christophe Bouchou. In third place, and still yet to break his gearbox, is Boris de Richebourg in the Belmondo Viper. In fourth place, Didier de Forny in the other Belmondo car, and Anthony Kumpen in fifth place. And stop-and-go penalty in the closing stages for the number 54 Art Engineering Porsche, the remaining one. We saw the sister car in the gravel traps earlier in the race. But this is Jamie Campbell-Walter now coming on to put a lap on the third-placed car. So far up the field is the Lister Storm. The Belmondo cars are third, fourth and fifth. Marc Duez in the better placed of the Raffinelli Ferraris is in sixth place because the second Raffinelli car has made a couple of unscheduled pit stops, and the number 5 machine, Emanuele Naspetti, now back at the wheel, is down in 23rd, mired in the NGT midfield and 2 laps off the lead. But still, Duez in the Ferrari is trying to mix it with the rest of the Vipers in the GT class. NGT being led by the number 69 Porsche, That is being run by the Rodolphe Orlando team, and the pair of drivers this weekend, Johnny Cecotto, the former World Touring Car Champion and motorcycle ace, and he is sharing with Austrian Philipp Peter, who will be a regular driver in the car. The Russian TMK Porsche goes off track there. The 59 car is in 20th place at the moment as he tries to let Christophe Boucher through and then runs out of road himself. Danger always of being too gentlemanly for the slower cars is evident there. He had plenty of runoff area though to get away with it, but it is important that the slower drivers, David, for the faster drivers' sake, stay on the racing line and don't do anything really unexpected.
It is, because if you're coming up behind someone, the last thing you want them to do is look in their mirrors and suddenly make a sharp movement. So the faster guys always at the driver's briefing say, whatever the slower cars are doing, if they stick to their line, then we can work our way around them, and that is the best thing to do. Because if you've got a slower guy in front of you and he sees you behind you and he suddenly decides to shoot to the right and you've already committed yourself to the right, then you're looking for an accident. So it's always better just to let the guys have their own line, and that way you can have a really good safe race.
And then at least the safe cars, the slower cars, are predictable rather than erratic. Well, we'll be back for the highlights of the finish of the race in just a moment. Eurosport live at Monza in the closing stages of the first round of the FIA GT Championship in the first Super Racing weekend. We're on board the Freisinger Motorsport Porsche, and that car with Michel Neugarten is currently lying in third place in the NGT class, being led by Philipp Peter. In second place is a newcomer team, the Art Engineering team from Italy. There, Porsche 911 GT3R, Luigi Mocca and Fabio Babini. They were in the Super Pole shootout. They were fast in qualifying, and they've lived up to that in the race. They're currently second. Neugarten is third. In fourth place is Luca Riccatelli's RWS Motorsport car, last year's champions. Riccatelli sharing with Dieter Quester, as his normal co-driver Hans-Jörg Hofer is still unfit and unable to drive. Riccatelli himself still slightly recuperating after a crash in testing earlier this season. But Riccatelli and Quester in fourth spot in the NGT class. Wolfgang Kaufmann in fifth place in his Freisinger Motorsport Porsche that he's sharing with Stefan Ortelli. Ortelli backed the car off the track in qualifying at the Varianti Ortelli, as the Freisinger team now call the Varianti Ascari. But Johnny Cecotto sharing with Philipp Peter, the Venezuelan driver, well, a real touring car superstar as well as motorbike supremo, but clearly showing that well, the Porsche is not beyond his numerous talents either, leading this quite comfortably at the moment.
No, he's been around for a long time now, initially in motorbikes as you said, and then into touring cars for BMW, and he raced for them for many years, and he won many championships for them. He was their lead driver. He did retire for a couple of years, but like most people in motorsport, he couldn't stand being without it, and here we are, back racing again this year in this car. And while he started 21st on the grid, he's now 8th overall and first in class, and they've done a superb job throughout the race, and they've worked away conscientiously and got themselves all the way up there.
Well, I said he was leading comfortably. They have had a fairly comfortable race, but at the moment Cecotto is holding on to a half-second advantage over this car, the 54 Porsche of Luigi Mocca, and the Art Engineering team with second place and a shot at the lead in the closing laps. Well, it'd be some feather in Mocca's cap if he can get ahead of Cecotto.
Somehow I don't think that's going to quite happen. He's right behind there, but as we've seen earlier on the TV, there was a 10-second penalty for Mocca in car 54. He's yet to come in and take that 10-second penalty. Now, as we said before, when you come into the pits, you've got to slow down into the pits. The stop and go penalty box is right at the entrance to the pits as you come in. Once you have your 10 seconds there, you then have to go all the way through the pit lane, speed limit, and then you can't accelerate until you come out. In fact, here's the car in now. We can see it coming in for its stop and go penalty. So he's going to lose a good minute by the time he gets into the pits, takes his penalty and comes out again. So unfortunately he's going to drop back quite a bit, probably about 5 places, because it's very close up there for all those cars.
Well, we just had an email in fact, from one of our viewers, Dave Lawton, on exactly that subject. He said instead of a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, wouldn't a drive-through penalty be slightly fairer? I have to say, a stop-and-go penalty loses you 2 minutes, as we said. A drive-through well, you'd save 15, 20 seconds. But still, it's got to be a slightly less harsh penalty. Anytime you come into the pit, you may as well count your race over from that.
That's right, it does affect you tremendously. What we don't find out at the moment is exactly why these guys are getting these penalties. We can only assume that they're going through one of the chicanes and straight lining it instead of going through it and gaining a place because of it. Now then, I understood that if you were to go through a chicane and you slowed down and you came out the other side in the same position you went in, they would look on that reasonably favourably. And if you simply were blatant at it and you took yourself through the chicane out the other side, straight lining it, then you would have a stop and go penalty. But as you said, a 10 seconds on top of having to come in and go out does give it a very, very harsh penalty indeed. And quite a number of people during this race have found that out.
They certainly have. They've been very, very liberal with their 10-second stop and goes. But well, you know, the rules are basically that you're not allowed to use bits that aren't marked out as racetrack, and everybody knows that going in. Christophe Bouchou then, second place, and David, there doesn't seem to be very much that he's going to be able to do about it. The Viper has just been a second or so, half a second perhaps would be fairer, off the pace of the Lister Storm all the way through the race. He had a good healthy period of nearly 20 laps in the lead before, well, he probably lost it a little early, getting tripped up by the back markers. Fought back against Jamie, but once Jamie was in front for the second time and through both the pit stops, the Lister has not handed over the lead. Belmondo Viper at the side of the track, that's very unusual, and that has just stopped. 10, 11 and 12 came in reverse order, 12, 11 and 10 over the line last time round, so Anthony Kumpen has now broken the engine, we gather, from the Belmondo team, with just 24 minutes of the race left to run. This is a 3-hour timed race, and so he had 25 minutes or so left to go. We're now inside 25 minutes of the race left, and Anthony Kumpen, well, that will be very disappointing indeed. There is the number one Lister Storm, one on the car and one on the board, and he has got the last of the Belmondo Vipers right behind him because he's just lapped everybody except for the second placed car on the track, and that is quite some dominance. And I think the Belmondo team will go away from Monza hoping that there aren't too many other flat out tracks for the rest of the championship, because if there are, they have got a lot of thinking to do. There is Paul Belmondo, the man who runs the team and races one of his own cars, as we ride with Jamie Campbell-Walton. We'll be back with more action from Monza in just a moment. Eurosport live at Monza for the opening race in the FIA GT Championship, racing towards its conclusion. 22 minutes left in this 3-hour timed event. You're watching a Ferrari. Gabriele Raffinelli with a pair of Ferraris here, and the best placed of those in 6th place at the moment is this car, number 6, with Marc Duez, the Belgian driver, at the helm. And oil flags being shown at the Parabolica, just the place you don't want them. Big cloud of dust hanging in the air as well. I wonder if somebody has run wide. Now, we've had a number of emails from you. If you want to send in your messages during our weekends or at any other stage, the car guys, all one word, at Eurosport.com. And alongside me, David Leslie has had his nose buried in the rule book that we've got here, because Neil Bywater wanted to know, what does the N in NGT stand for? And David, you couldn't find out, could you?
It's not in the rule book that I've just looked in, but all I can think of is that because motorsport rules are the way they are, run by the FIA, and they have a Group N championship which is throughout the world, so I can take it that the N is similar to the N that they use throughout other types of motorsport, and it's Group N, which is a more basic group, i.e. production type car that you can buy for the road, readily available all the time.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that. I was going to suggest that you had two classes, GT and not GT. I think I like your rule better.
I think my one sounds a little bit better than yours. Yours is off the cuff, not knowing what you're doing there.
Mine sounds like glib rubbish, but that's all that our viewers expect from me. So, final stages then of the race. Let's recap. This is Marc Duez in the Ferrari in 5th place now, of course, because Anthony Kumpen's engine has blown. So he has picked up one spot there, and I think his chances perhaps of finishing on the podium are almost nil, because there's some 3 Vipers ahead of him and the Lister Storm. I wouldn't say entirely nil with 20 minutes left to run, because anything can and often does happen in GT racing. But Marc Duez doing a good job with this car, sharing with Gunther Bleilinger. Bleilinger, the German driver, doing the middle stint, and Duez racing, rallying, rally crossing, ice racing. The Belgian driver's pretty much done everything. Well, there are the Paul Belmondo closest to the camera, discussing with his teammates the demise of the number 10 car, and that was Claude-Yves Gosselin, who he was chatting to. Gosselin, the other driver with Anthony Kumpen of that number 10 Belmondo Viper. And they are now starting to slide down the order. And with 20 minutes left to go, I don't think they will get a GT race classification, to be honest. I think they've blown just a little too early for that. This Belmondo Viper behind Jamie Campbell-Walter, though, is really hanging on in there. So I wonder if that's the 12 car, Boris de Richebourg. For the moment, Jamie Campbell-Walter's last lap, 151.4, de Richebourg 151.5. So it may well be Boris, because he's been right behind Jamie for a couple of laps. There, Belmondo and Gosselin. Campbell-Walter comes across in front of them and in front of the Lister team. And de Richebourg is going for the unlapping manoeuvre here. And I think Jamie will let him go.
It looks very much, they've slowed down a little bit. Most of the cars have been running around 149, 150 bracket. And all of a sudden they're doing 152s and 153s. So I would think they're all thinking that we've got 20 minutes to go. We need to conserve just a little bit of fuel, try and get to the end without another stop for a splash and dash or anything like that. So
well, yes, that's exactly right, I think, David, because fuel isn't something that we've touched on too much so far, but a number of the teams did say that because all of the running here, apart from qualifying itself, was in the rain, including the 2 test days, actually working out the fuel consumption for Monza has been a little bit of a guesstimate. It was generally accepted that cars like the Ferrari that are so new would probably be A, thirsty, and B, not entirely sure what they were doing. But certainly the first stop for the Lister and for the Belmondo cars and for the second-placed Labra competition, Chirot-sponsored Viper, were all pretty early, 20, 21, 22, 24 laps. And their second stints, they lasted right up till lap 54 to 58, so they were doing a 30-lap second stint. I think perhaps on the first stints they were just coming in early to make sure that there were no miscues with running out on the back of the circuit. And I think now they've probably got it sorted. That what we don't know, obviously, from our commentary boxes, is what answers they came up with.
Now, what happens when you come in for your first stop? Everyone takes it the cautious side and comes in a little bit early, as you said. And therefore, when they fill it up, there is a fuel meter there, and you can measure exactly how much fuel goes in. So from that first stop, we can work out, under race conditions, exactly how much fuel they're using. And from that, they'll be able to extend the centre section a little bit to try and go as long as they possibly can and use the full 100 litres that they have on board, filling that up for the last section, and then they've got to try and drive to a fuel consumption to make sure they can get it to the end of the race without coming back in again. If you can do that, then you've got a good chance of doing well. If you have to come back in for a splash and dash, it's like coming in for a 10-second stop-and-go penalty. You're going to lose so much time, and all that hard-earned work that you've done to try and keep in there and get that good position will suddenly disappear in front of you. But I noticed that the time between the leader, Campbell-Walter, and number 7, the Bouchot car that we've just seen there on TV is coming down a little bit from 28 seconds to 23 seconds. Now we've got about 17 minutes to go,
So we're going to be slightly confused here, because the clock that started at the beginning of the race is counting down to the 3-hour mark, 17 minutes left on it, but our graphics saying that we are on our final lap. So Jamie Campbell-Walter, alternatively, 17 minutes from victory, or about 2 miles. We'll have to wait and see what the checkered flag man says. We've been going through the running order. Campbell-Walter still leading by 23 seconds from Christophe Bouchot, and undoubtedly, if he's aware of how far he's got to go, as in 2 or 3 laps, no wonder he was quite happy to let Boris de Richebourg go past him a couple of laps ago, and no wonder he's dropped the pace to mid-53s, whereas Bouchot is still flying around in mid-51s. Boris de Richebourg in 3rd place, unlapped himself, so the 3 podium finishers will be on the same lap, as opposed to de Richebourg in 3rd place being 1 lap down. Then Didier Defourny's car, the other Belmondo Viper, that's still running, in 4th place. In 5th place, Marc Duez. 6th place now, the number 14 car we haven't talked about. That's the Rodolfo Orlando car, the second 911 GT2 car. And there is the checkered flag ready for Jamie Campbell-Walter. to win the opening round of the FIA GT Championship. Well, no confusion for the team or for Jamie as he slows down under the Lister team to congratulate them and receive their congratulations from Tom Coronel. Second place comes out of the final corner, the Labre Competition Viper. First race for this car. They took pole, they led convincingly, and in the end, second place, 23 seconds behind for Christophe Bouchou at the helm, and his teammate Jean-Philippe Belloc. Boris de Richebourg will take third place. There is Tom Coronel with the Lister mechanics and his teammate Jamie Campbell-Walter. So in the end, no chance of miscues over the fuel. They managed to get it safely to the end. And mark one down in the book for Lister. Well, disappointment clearly for Julian Bailey in the background there. Yeah, there he is in the jeans and the T-shirt, who would have shared the number 2 car with Nicholas Springer had it been able to take the start. But convincing performance from Lister and worrying for the rest of them. All right, Monza is a very different track to most others, as we see the blown tyre in the final corner drama there for the Perspective Racing car of Thierry Perrier and Michel Neugarten. Well, that won't distract them too much. Neugarten still taking third place in the NGT class. So blown tyre are not coming out of the parabolica on the last lap. He kept it together. If it hadn't been the last lap though, David, don't think he would have been on the podium.
No, he wouldn't have made it round another lap. With a tyre like that, when it's that badly blown, it was just about hanging off the wheel rim, and it would have come off in a very short distance.
There would have been very little Porsche to drive round by halfway around Monza. So NGT then falling to the number 69 car, and that will be Johnny Cecotto and Philippe Pater on the top step of the podium. Mark Duez stopping for what, a Belgian flag, or just a quick word with a friendly marshal?
No, he's picked someone up because there's somebody else inside that car. There's now 2 people inside there. So I'm not sure who he stopped to pick up, but there's certainly someone else. Maybe his teammate stopped on the other side of the circuit, he stopped to pick him up, I'm not sure, but there's definitely 2 people inside that car somewhere.
I was going to suggest that perhaps there might be another itinerant Belgian hanging around. I can't think of any that... well, Anthony Kumpen blew up, but was that just Anthony Kumpen, the Belgian driver in the Belmondo car? Was that where that had been? That may well have been, I suppose. Jamie Campbell-Walter leads round Christophe Bouchou, and that's about as close as they've been for the last hour and a half. Bouchou unable to really do very much about the pace of the Lister once he had lost the lead. And there is our NGT class winner. I'm afraid that Andre Edmonds suggesting that, like in karting, his impression was that M stood for novice. I don't think Johnny Cecotto would be too impressed with that label, nor half of the other teams, never mind the drivers, in the NGT class. So I think we're going to stick with David's basic Group N of GT explanation until we can find a rule book or somebody from the FIA who will tell us otherwise. So opening round of the FIA GT Championship, the first Eurosport Super Racing weekend, and it will be one to remember for different reasons for Lawrence Pearson, the Lister team. The first one, of course, being that they won the race. The second, of course, being that their second car didn't even get to start. Now, in fact, Neugarten finishing on the podium in the NGT class, but that allowed Luca Riccatelli's car, the 77 Red Bull RWS car, into second place in NGT. They had been in third place, but they moved up into second place as the Moccia Art Engineering Porsche served its stop-and-go penalty. That car dropped, in fact, only to fourth place in the NGT class. So Riccatelli taking second and Neugarten taking third place. And Jamie Campbell-Walter working up a sweat inside the very warm Leicester Storm cockpit with that V12 furnace in front of you and the exhaust pipes running down the side. I'm sure he felt every inch of that distance. Tom Coronel relishing that kiss. Let's hear now from our winners.
Jamie, you won. How do you feel?
It's obviously coming off last year was always going to be hard, wasn't it? Everyone wants to beat the champions, and I think we've proved that we've got a good car, reliable car, 2 good drivers, good team manager, good wife, and a really good team. And I'm really pleased, and yeah, I dedicate this one to the boys really, because they've worked really hard over the winter, and Lawrence obviously to get the cars ready.
Starting from 13th on the grid didn't seem to affect you too much. You were into the lead by the time of the first driver change.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit hectic down at the first corner, but then after the first corner, it wasn't too much of a problem. apart from obviously my old friend Christoph in the Labra car, who I got past, but then had a problem with some oil on the track and came up on a back marker, so I backed off rather than took a risk, and obviously he got the run on me. So decided just to not take any risks. He was obviously going quite quick and didn't really want to let me pass, so I knew that our boys were well practiced in the pit stops, and just sort of hoped that Tommy could take over and put us in the lead.
And Tom Coronel, the second driver in the car. What do you think your chances are this year of joining Jamie and becoming a champion?
Of course, it's a good start. I mean, the first races are the most easy one to win because a lot of people make mistakes and didn't finish their cars yet. I mean, we've proved that we are ready for the first race and that the other cars are still not ready. I saw other cars with a lot of brake trouble, and yeah, the team is good. They're not for nothing champion last year, so we should try to do it again this year.
Well done, both of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, Tom, because of his late joining of the Lister team, not able to do all the races, so that might actually rule him out of the Drivers' Championship chase, but certainly when he's paired in the car with Jamie Campbell-Walter, a very potent combination. Lawrence Pierce, the Lister team owner and boss, looking very happy and relaxed in the middle of the shot there. Interesting to hear Tom talking about other teams running into brake problems as well, and maybe that was part of the reason that the Labra competition car seemed to fade a little in the last hour or so of the race, and perhaps again the Belmondo Vipers. Let's hear now from Christophe Bouchou, if perhaps we can pick up on that.
It just seemed today as though the Lister was a little bit too strong. What were your feelings?
Yes, absolutely. Lister had 1 year experience, and that can change many things for us. It was our first race with a Viper, and we didn't improve enough the car on the dry condition. So the result is really good, and we are not we are behind second, of course, but not a lot of second behind. So that means it's really good for the rest of the championship.
Thank you very much, Christophe.
Valid point, I think, from Christophe Bouchou. They've done precious little testing, almost all of it in the wet until we got to qualifying, and to finish less than half a minute behind after 2 hours, 45 minutes of racing. Very close indeed, and I think they are going to be very much one of the championship candidates.
I'm sure when they get more used to the car, then yes, they'll be a little bit closer, because we noticed that during the first pit stop, when they were nose to tail and they came in for the pit stop, when they came out, the Lister was 17 seconds ahead. So in that one pit stop, the Lister managed to pull out that 17 seconds. And when you think they were only 24 seconds behind at the end, after that 2 3/4 hours, then actually on the circuit, they've done extremely well, and it's only the little bits and pieces in the paddock that's let them down so far, and that will get better.
I agree indeed. We're looking forward to a great championship. So Jamie Campbell-Walter and Tom Coronel win for Lister the opening race of the FIA GT Championship. Christophe Bouchou coming home in second place, driving the Labra competition car he shared with Jean-Philippe Belloc across the line, just 24 seconds adrift. And those two very much championship front runners. Two Belmondo Vipers in third and fourth. The Ferrari run by Gabriele Raffinelli in fifth place. And the Porsche GT2 car in sixth position. The NGT winners Johnny Cicotto and Philip Pater in their Porsche.
Winner of the NGT race. How was it for you?
It was a great race. I mean, we struggled a little bit in qualifying, and after that we found a good setup. Thanks also to Johnny this morning in the warm-up. And Johnny did a really good first stint. We were able to make up positions and not losing too much to the two front runners. And I had my second run, which was very good. The car was good. I have to thank Pirelli. They did a very good job, because after qualifying it didn't look like that. But in the race the tire was very performant and consistent, and that gave us the chance to win the race.
It seemed as though there was a good battle in the middle of the race. It was unfortunate that there was the penalty for the other car right in the middle, but you must be delighted to have started the season with a victory.
Of course, I mean, it's really incredible the job the team did, and Peter and Philippe, and everything was fantastic, because yesterday really was the first time in qualifying we were running with the car in the dry conditions because of the bad conditions on Friday, and I cannot believe that now we are in this position.
Thank you very much, both of you. Well done.
Thank you. So Cicotto and Philip Pater doing a very convincing job. As our interviewer Simon said, the 54 car, just being penalised out of what was a half-second battle for the lead with Cecotto, and that would have gone undoubtedly right to the line. But the Art Engineering team, I thought, did a very good job indeed with that and their other cars. Second place went to Luca Riccitelli and Dieter Cresta, last year's runners-up in the championship in the Red Bull car, and in third place in the NGT class, the Perspective Racing car of Thierry Perrier and Michel Neugarten. And just to keep one viewer, Mike Gazzard asked, do you think that Jamie Campbell-Walter will ever do single-seaters? Please read this or I won't watch Eurosport again. Well, Jamie Campbell-Walter started off in single-seaters, but found that his budgets were less acceptable to a single-seater team than they were to a full season of TVR racing. And from there, well, he took a different career path and has never looked back. Will he go back to single-seaters? Frankly now, David, I doubt it.
I doubt it also. He's started his single-seater career with me, in actual fact, in the David Leslie racing team in Vauxhall Junior. So he's been there, he's done that, and he's found his niche, and he loves what he's doing now. And I think it's very unlikely that Jamie will ever go back to single-seaters. He'll be in sports cars for quite some time. He's a young lad, and he's got a lot of time ahead of him.
He certainly is, and when you think of some of the drivers still racing into their 50s very successfully and being worldwide names, Jamie has got every opportunity of doing very much the same deal. He's clearly one of the fastest sports car drivers in Europe, and that goes a long way to being one of the fastest in the world. And just incidentally, talking about the more global picture, every car here carried stickers on their numbers, and a lot of them other marks of respect to the late Bob Wallach, who was so tragically killed in a road accident at Sebring earlier this month, and very much his presence felt among the Porsche family, of course, which makes up a large part of this entire championship paddock, and among the NGT cars particularly. But many drivers have raced with and against Bob, and his presence, I'm sure, will continue to be deeply felt, or his absence will be continue to be deeply felt. But a mark of respect from all the drivers here just for the opening round of this FIA GT Championship. And a pretty impressive start for Lister, an impressive start as well for the Labour competition team. Remains to be seen now whether the Belmondo Vipers can continue to become, or can continue as the sort of threat that they were last year in the championship. They've certainly not started the season in the most convincing style. Well, Eurosport's Super Racing weekends continue. Don't think that just because the GTs are finished that the programme has finished. We've got two Super Touring races and the Super Productions yet to come from this warm afternoon at Monza. Well, this is Boris de Richebourg. The camera's there, the microphone is there. Let's see if we can hear from him.
On the podium. Pleased to be on the podium?
Yeah, for sure you're always pleased to be on the podium, but we had some problem with the car. Like I said already, we had some big problem with the gearbox in a free practice, so we couldn't make any change on the car, and for the race we just put the car like it was before, and just hoping that no gearbox problem again, and we're quite happy to score point. That's, you know, that's racing.
Thank you very much, Boris.
Thanks a lot.
Well, Boris showing that even the most reliable of cars, and the Chrysler Viper is certainly among those, can have its off days. In fact, its off weekends. They have put 3 replacement gearboxes into de Richebourg's number 12 Belmondo Viper over the course of the weekend, and basically just polished the other 2 cars in the team. I mean, there's no explaining that kind of luck, but at least de Richebourg made it to the end with this last chance gearbox, and on the podium as well for Belmondo Racing. We'll be back with more from Monza in just a moment. British national anthem playing over Monza for the winning team. No, not David Coulthard, Mika Hakkinen or any of the others racing for British Formula 1 teams. This time it's Lister who have won the opening round of the FIA GT Championship. The third place trophies being presented to the drivers of the number 12 Belmondo car, Vincent Voss and Boris Drieschenberg, in runners-up spot, and I'm sure posting a threat for the season from Labre competition, Christophe Bouchou and Jean-Philippe Belloc, and the winners from Lister Storm Racing, the drivers of the number 1 car, reigning champion Jamie Campbell-Walter and arch teammate Tom Coronel. Coronel able to compare for the Lister team the Viper versus the Lister Storm. Of course, raced a couple of races last year for Car Sport Holland. David, he was saying before the race that the Lister very different in feel, much more level, much more of a firmly sprung racing car than the Viper, that still betrays a little bit its road car roots with its slightly softer handling and balance.
Yeah, the Viper was very much made to sell in great numbers, where the Lister is made to sell in much smaller numbers. And having designed the Lister originally, it is much more of a stiffer car, and as Tom has discovered, it certainly goes around corners much flatter. And some of the cars we've seen as they were going around the circuit did make the circuit look very bumpy. In actual fact, Monza is a very, very smooth circuit. There are some nice curbs around Monza. When you keep hitting those curbs, they bounce up over them, and maybe that's given some of the viewers the idea that it's bumpy around here, when in actual fact one of the smoothest circuits we'll visit all year long.
Another thing that we did see in qualifying was a couple, particularly in Superpole, 1 or 2 of the cars pitching and bouncing a lot, and possibly a little bit of that is still down to the fact that there was so little dry weather running here. All of Friday's practice was wet, all of the test days were wet, and so they only really had qualifying to set it up. It's a mark of a team with not enough control over the car that they haven't got it set up for a race, but that's possibly part of the reason why it may have looked a little bumpy. The other reason is, with such long straights, often you get a very, very strong foreshortening effect of the cameras, which tends to enhance the way that they seem to be pitching around.
You do, but as you said before, it's down to the team to try and get the cars sorted very quickly. And as we heard from the winners of the NGT, Johnny Cicotto and Philippe Petter, when Philip was saying that it was thanks to Johnny's experience and his ability to sort the car out in that very short warm-up we had this morning, because it wasn't until then that they actually got their car to handle well. So that's why they started, 21st on the grid, and yet they could manage to finish 7th overall and first in class. It took until this morning to be able to sort those cars out. And it is that experience, whether it be the experience of the driver, or whether it be somebody, a team that's been around for such a long time, those things help tremendously to be able to get a car sorted.
Yeah, experience counts for an awful lot in any championship, and when you're coming in with a new team, to have a driver who can really sort the handling of a car, it's a very big bonus. And that's, we were talking earlier on in the race about the Ferraris, comparing last year's 550 Maranellos run by First Racing to this year's cars. There you can see the Team Raffinelli drivers on the podium of the number 6 car, Mark Duez and Gunther Bleilinger. And the Raffinelli engineering expertise, they've been running away from Europe in the American Le Mans Series for the last couple of years with very high-tech equipment, and they're used to sorting cars, and they're used to building their own cars and developing their own cars. I think that's shown really in how well this year's Ferrari 550s seem to be going compared to the opposition, never mind compared to what happened last year.
It is, and compared to last year, they're just so much better. They're right up there, they're giving the cars very, very quickly, and it's made a massive difference to that Ferrari 550. As you say, the team is very experienced, they've been running many cars for many years.
From your point of view?
First of all, we're very pleased to finish this long race. This is the first race the Ferrari see the checkered flag, and we are very pleased. The race was not very special for us. We just drove through the pace. We had no problems. The car is ready to restart, so it's a very good point for the team. And thanks to the mechanics and all the team to have done such a big work before in the last 2 weeks. So I'm very pleased to see the checkered flag.
And Gunther, what's your hopes for the next race in Brno?
Okay, we will do a little development to continue it, and we hope to finish again. That's the main thing. And then we will work very hard that we improve ourselves. And the car, the team, we are strong and working.
Yes, Mark.
This is the first time the no-hair team finish a race.
Thank you very much.
And not for lack of trying, there an early moments of miscuing. Mark Duez being caught out by the 2 NGT cars that battling ahead of him, who was trying to lap, got it all sorted out, went down the escape road and tidied it all back up. So Baldy Slaphead Racing scores for Ferrari. I'm sure Gabriele Raffinelli would much rather hear the term referred to as Raffinelli Racing. There is Michel Neugarten leading his teammate out onto the podium. Thierry Perrier alongside him, sponsored by Bearings Bank of Switzerland. And that didn't seem to have stopped him at all during the course of the race. In third place, in second place in the NGT category, Luca Riccatelli in the 77 car, sharing with Dieter Questa. And the winners, Johnny Cecotto having trouble negotiating the podium. Well, you wouldn't think that that was serious trouble. And Philip Pater, the Austrian, sharing with the Venezuelan. The Italian national anthem playing out for the winners of the NGT category, and that was the Redolfi Orlando team, Johnny Cecotto and Philip Pater. So final confirmation then of the race result as we've seen it, and the NGT drivers being given their rewards for their efforts and getting busy with the physique. Well, a couple of questions. We'll just dive into the email. Thank you very much for your dozens and dozens of emails in the closing stages of this race. The car guys at Eurosport.com. And one of them from Martin in Blackpool, wondering if we'd like to see any TVRs approaching the FIA Championship. Of course, TVR in both the GT and GTO, or NGT categories in the British Championship. Be interesting to see them come out. I'm sure Jamie Campbell-Walter would like to give his former employers a good thrashing with the Lister Storm, but perhaps that will come in a year or so's time once TVR have conquered Britain. We'll be back live from Monza with more action in just a moment.
The FIA GT Championship. With LeasePlan. Fleet management in motion. Filatice. Stretching fibers, fabrics and yarns.
Eurosport live at Monza for the opening Super Racing Weekend. This brand new television experience from Eurosport, combining some of Europe's top single-seater, saloon car and sports car racing championships. And one of those categories is the Euro STC, the European Touring Car Championship, providing races for super production and super tourers. We're looking at the first race for the super touring cars from this Monza track. Now, it's a pair of races for super touring of 50 kilometres distance each, which is 9 laps of Monza, considerably more of others. And from the front of the grid, Nicola Larini on the left-hand side and Gabriele Tarquini, the pole man for Honda, leading the field away. Very quick starting Alfa in the middle there. That's the white car of, is that Toccacello coming through? Trying to come around the works Alphas. What a start. Surely he's got to get penalised for that one. Toccacello in the number 10 car from 135, 7th on the grid. Jan Nielsen in the Volvo, and Fabrice Walfisch going off outside the first Variante. Walfisch, the ex-Formula 3000 driver in the Honda. Welcome to touring cars, super touring style racing there. Gabriele Tarquini leads from Nicola Larini in the number 2 Works Alpha, or not Works Alpha, we must not say that, they are not Works supported cars in this or the Super Production Championship. Larini now towing up behind Tarquini, looking to make a move. Third place is Fabrizio Giovanardi, the reigning champion. And Larini neatly done on the brakes, David, no doubting that move at all.
Yes, he came up that straight with a slipstream. He came out of the parabolica at the end there, right behind Tarquini, and he tucked in there until it came towards the end. He popped himself out and out-braked him into the chicane there. Very good move. And you can see now this Honda sandwiched between 2 Alfa Romeos. I would reckon that they'll try and... and
Tarquini, what on earth happened there? Lost the Honda. Tarquini goes off in a big fashion. Too hard over the curbs, David?
I think so. You could see he hit that curb on as he turned in on the left there, and he just seemed to bounce the car a little bit, and he went in very, very hard indeed. Now then, he's done a fair bit of damage to that car, so I'm not sure how difficult it'll be or how hard it'll be to put that together for the second race.
Well, of course, they have the full length of the GT race to try and work some magic on that car, but meanwhile, it's 1 and 2 for Alfa Romeo, Giovanardi and Larini. Now, will Nicola Larini sit out front and make the reigning champion sit behind him all the way to the flag, or will he tow Fabrizio Giovanardi down the straight and then at the last moment let him go?
I think these two here, they've got a nice lead now out in front, and as long as they don't take each other off, I'm pretty sure their instructions will be race as hard as you want, but don't knock each other off and don't lose the race. So as we can see here, they're going for it big time, and there's Larini just through into the front. You can see the cars squirming as they're coming out of that chicane there, accelerating from some cars in first, some cars in second, that really tight chicane in these super touring cars.
Well, you can see how much his teammate lost there, Giovanardi on the outside, and then having to take a deeper, tighter entrance into that first Variante, losing out as Larini took the lead. This is Gianluca De Lorenzi in the BMW, leading the second of the white Alphas. That's Lancialotti in the number 9 machine.
And these cars are diving about all over the place. Down the inside goes the Volvo, and he's got it wrong. And there it goes, out into the gravel trap.
And so too does the Alpha, yeah. That's Jan Nielsen, Flash Nielsen in the 24 car. Look at this, dives to the inside, goes inside. And unfortunately from there, Angelo Lancialotti off in the gravel as well. Well, Jan Nielsen's not coming out of there. Will we see Lancialotti either?
Jan Nielsen, you can see he's well buried in there. There's no point in trying to get out of that. He's not going to go anywhere at all.
Now the grid for the second of the Super Touring races, which we'll be picking up live after these highlights from race 1, is the finishing order reversed. So these two finishing first and second here, Nicola Larini and Fabrizio Giovanardi for Alfa Romeo, will start at the back of the grid, but behind them will be the drivers who failed to finish in the order in which they failed to finish. So Nicola Larini winning there from Fabrizio Giovanardi, outbraked his teammate to take victory. And the Alfa Romeo boys first and second in race 1. Hard to ask for anything more. Colciaggio third in his privateer Audi. Sandro Sardelli fourth in the Nissan Primera. Fabrice Walfisch recovering from that first corner excursion to finish fifth ahead of Gianluca De Lorenzi in the BMW, who was ahead of the BMW, of the Alfa and Volvo clash that we saw. So first blood goes to Ferrari tester, racer, and now Alfa racer Nicola Larini. Let's hear from our winner.
The second race, you're going to be starting from the back of the grid. How do you feel about that? Do you like the idea of the grid changing round and the winner being at the back of the grid? And do you think that you will be able to win?
I think it's not easy to win because Fabrizio will start in front of me, so this means my team may to overtake, so this is the first important point, a difficult point. And then I don't know, because I have a problems with the clutch, and maybe we have to change the clutch. I thought that for me was just 10 meters races, no more, because there was problem the clutch since the start. So in any case, I have to start in the back grid as per the rules.
So Nicola Larini and Fabrizio Giovanardi, first and second in race 1 for the Alfa Romeo team. How will they do in race 2? Find out in a moment. Welcome back to Monza live. Martin Haven and David Leslie preparing for the second race in the FIA Euro Super Touring Championship meeting here at Monza. Part of Eurosport's new initiative, the Super Racing Weekends. Hope you're enjoying it. Certainly we've been enjoying it. It was raining steadily all the way through Friday, but Saturday and Sunday have been bright, warm and sunny, and a lot of Milanese residents coming out to the Monza track to enjoy this opening Super Racing Weekend. And of course those of you who aren't nearby the Monza parklands, hopefully watching it on Eurosport and equally enjoying it. Well, the FIA GT Championship kicking off with a win for Lister, a win in the opening race here in the Super Touring for this man, Nicola Larini, in his Alfa Romeo, from his teammate, the reigning champion Fabrizio Giovanardi. But, as Larini said,
Nicola
clutch
Larini,
problems after race 1.
Race. Now you're at the back of the grid for the second race. It's only 9 laps. Can you win?
I think it's really difficult because first I am in front of my teammate, is quick like me, and you have clutch problems, and I think I have a problem to start. So and I think it will be difficult in any case to keep a lot of position to arrive at the first row in 9 laps.
Thank you, Nicola.
So Larini right at the back of the grid. Look on the right-hand side of your picture. There are the 2 Alfa Romeos. But at the front grid spot, we are waiting for the 24 car. That's Jan Nielsen, Flash, as he is known, and his Volvo. Now, we saw the Volvo going off in the highlights of race 1 into the gravel traps as he battled with the number 9 Alfa Romeo, the Conrero racing car of Angelo Lanciolotti. But it looks as though Nielsen's Volvo may not take the start.
The back of the grid, you're just above your teammate. Do you think that you can win this race?
It's possible. It was important to come out of the first chicane. I think that will be a big problem. But after, I think it's possible to win.
But the race, it's only 9 laps. You think you might be able to overtake everybody in 9 laps?
I will try to do that. I don't know. I hope so.
Thank you, Fabrizio.
Well, David, this is something that has been tossed around occasionally with Super Touring racing in the British Touring Car Championship, but was never taken up. How would you fancy starting a race of, all right, 9 laps? It's 50 kilometres. I mean, 9 laps of the Brands Hatch Indy Circuit would be a non-starter, but 9 laps here, would you fancy starting at the back and fancy your chances?
I think having actually done this once before at Donington Park when they had a race meeting at the end of the season, nothing to do with the championship, we actually did this. One race we started at normal grid positions, and the second one we started in reverse order. And yes, it can be done. And seeing how well the Alfa Romeos went this morning, then yes, I'm pretty sure that they can come all the way from the back through to win this race. We can see on the camera, we're just looking there at the Volvo in the pits, we was panning away from it. So it looks like that car's not going to make it onto the grid. Right beside it was the number 4 car of Tarquini, and we're waiting to find out. We think that one might make it onto the grid. There is just a couple of minutes to go before it all starts. You can see the people starting to walk away from the grid to clear the grid now before the start. There they all go, so they'll set off on their warm-up lap very shortly. They'll come back. It is a standing start, and then we'll set off. You can see at the very front there that grid position is empty. Jan Nielsen, who should be there in the Volvo number 24, they're obviously having a major problem with that car, and it looks like it'll remain where it is, not go anywhere at all.
Looks as though we're not going to see Enrico Toccacello either in the second Conrero run Alpha, because the number 10 car is in the pit lane, and somebody else being pushed away as well. The number 11 car being pushed to the head of the pit lane, being pushed there, incidentally. That's the Greyhound Motorsport car of Gianluca Roda, his Opel Vectra. And that is just being followed up, driven by Gabriele Tarquini's Honda. So Tarquini's Honda will take the start, it seems, as the warm-up lap finishes. Now, that's very interesting. As soon as they start to clear the grid, everybody's moving up. So the number 10 car is again moving, the Alfa Romeo of Enrico Toccacello. So we look like having at least 3 starters from the pit lane. Jan Nielsen's car not moved yet. I can still... Oh no, I can't see it on the pit apron anymore as I crane around the corner, but there is a bunch of people obscuring, so he may still be there. The field, though, at the moment looks set to be led away by Guido Cignari in the Audi A4 Quattro on the left-hand side of the shot. And the man who should line up 3rd place, the BMW on the right there, Antonio Materia. Now, there's going to be obviously some demands on them to make sure that they lead the field thoroughly, and a chance, well, one of the good things perhaps for the slower cars of the reverse grid is a chance for them to be shown live on Eurosport across Europe for their sponsors, if they have any, as the leaders of the race, because although we'll have to watch the progress of Larini and Giovanardi from the back, we must also watch the guys who are actually leading the race at the same time. So tough job for the director as well as everybody else.
It is. I think it's terrific for the guys who are at the front of this race. They race normally and they're at the back and they don't get too much coverage. And for a change, they're right at the front and they're going to get all the coverage. Couple of things, when this lot sets off, the cars in the pit lane will join them onto the back, so they will start behind the Alfa Romeo. So those 3 cars that were sitting in the pit lane, the Honda, the Alfa Romeo and the Opel, will start behind. What I expected them to do was to come out on a warm-up lap and start on the warm-up lap behind them in order to warm their tyres up, but that hasn't happened. They're still sitting in the pit lane, so it looks like they won't be allowed to go until after the actual green light to start the race. So that's what's going to happen there. So I would think the longer they sat in the pits with their tyre warmers on, the better it'll be for them. They're sitting there for another couple of minutes before they get to actually start. We are hearing at the moment that they're actually going to get Jan Nielsen's Volvo started, so that will push it from 3 cars to 4 cars starting from the pit lane.
That's going to be
it's going to make it even more interesting, because now not at the back of the 2 Alfa Romeos, but once the green light starts, then another 4 cars will join on. We can see the cars lined up there in front of us.
So getting ready to go for the start of this final Super Touring race. There you can see the first of the cars. That's Gianluca Roda's Opel in the pit lane. Behind him, Gabriele Tarquini's Honda. No tyre warmers in evidence, though. Jan Nielsen's car yet to make it to the head of the, or to the tail of that queue at pit out. But Enrico Toccacello's Conrero Run Alpha, car number 10, is there. So we've been told by the team that they're going to try and get Nielsen in via our pits reporter, but it looks as though they have yet to get the car to go. Now, quite what the problem would be, I'm not sure, but with the cars already on the back straight coming up parallel behind the pits on the warm-up lap and all of them weaving furiously, David, I think that the clock has probably run down to 0 now for Nielsen.
Yes, I think they're really struggling. Because he went into the gravel trap on the first race, I would take it that they filled the engine compartment full of stones, and therefore it's probably necessitated an engine change. These things are not the simplest things in the world to change, so they've been working flat out doing that, and if they can get it done in time, then I'm sure they will join on as it turns. But we've got about another 20 or 30 seconds before that happens, and they'll work right up till the very last minute, the last second, to be able to try and get him out there and take part in this race.
Just a quick email in from Pedant's Corner from Dave Andrews of the Liddon Hill Silly Hat Brigade to correct a point I made earlier. The red and yellow striped flag, of course, is the slippery surface flag rather than, strictly speaking, an oil flag. Everybody calls it the oil flag, but it is for anything, any amount of cack on the track that will disrupt the drivers. Jan Nielsen has got the engine going finally. Perhaps he was just biding his time so it didn't cook itself as he comes down the pit road. Our other onboard camera you've already seen with Fabrizio Giovanardi. Hooray! Starts from the front in race 1, but starts from the back in race 2. And boy, I bet that onboard tape will be worth watching all the way through. Hi, Monica, the Alfa Romeo team boss, with everything crossed for the start of what's going to be a very novel experiment for all of these drivers. And as you say, one of the Toka shootouts featured a reverse grid start. I've forgotten all about that. They're not going to flag people off here halfway through the race for being at the back of the queue, though, I don't think, either.
No, they're not, but this is going to be very interesting at the first corner. These guys are going to be first in there, and they're going to have the really quick guys pushing in the hard. hard from the back to try and get through to the front. So the first corner will be very exciting. I expect to see at least one or more cars fall off on the first corner, whether it be just over excitement on their own part or whether being pushed from behind by the cars trying to make a good start. What the guys need to do is get through the first corner. There's a 5-second board being hung up. 5 seconds until the lights come on, then they'll turn to green and the race will start. There's the lights on.
The Audi on the left, now the front car on the grid, and the BMW alongside. Antonio Materia gets a good launch, as you expect from the BMW, but the A4 Quattro gets away nicely. One of the cars further back really smoking the hides, but it will be the BMW that leads, the Audi getting swamped. And now what should happen is that the entire field should start to be able to overtake everybody in front of them. Into the corner goes Paulo Zadra in second place, and carnage through goes into that gap, goes the number 3 car, as off goes Eric Carroll, the Frenchman, former multiple French Super Touring champion, off in the weeds, or in the gravel traps, as the pit lane starters come through at the back of the field there. And already the works, I'm not going to say that one any more times, already the number 1 and 2 Alfa Romeos working their way up. A quick burst there from Fabrizio Giovanardi. Tarquini ahead of the rest of that group. That's the pole man, or the man who started at the front. That's the number 8 Audi of Massimiliano Pigoli, in fact, Roberto Colciaggio's teammate, who was smoking heavily there. But the number 3 Nord Auto Alfa Romeo of the Italian lady, Romana Bernardoni, went through a big gap early on and moved up heavily. Into the gravel goes number 20, Gianluca De Lorenzi's BMW. David, you predicted carnage, and that was with a capital K for carnage, because De Lorenzi has gone off there, and that's the second of the Lesmos, and there's no coming back from there.
I think he was very much pushed off there, and you can see
that's the number 3 car. Now that was Romana Bernardoni. She, as I said, she went through a gap when everybody ran wide at the first corner and picked up 3 or 4 places, but she's gone off somewhere, or she's got caught up. Look, she hit the back of the Audi and she's immediately blown the radiator, and so that is why Bernardoni went off there. Now then, let's try and get this slightly. There's Jan Nielsen and some parked cars. So Nielsen out of the race, Bernardoni out of the race, and I think we will probably find that that is a immediate result of either overheating or breaking an oil line, that the car has just died on her within half a lap. So she's out, unfortunately, having picked up a couple of spots. But I noticed very well up the order. Look, Fabrice Valfish there in the Honda. Right behind him is one of the Nord Auto Alphas. And as they come across the line for the first time, Roberto Colciaggio leads in the Audi. Zadra in second place. Materia in third place, still in the BMW that started on the outside of the second row of the grid. Nicola Marini in fourth place as Colciaggio goes through the chicane. He will get penalised for that. Roberto Colciaggio will play no part in this race as far as we're concerned from now on, because he will get a black flag penalty and a drive-through stop and go. So Nicola Marini up to third place already by his own superb driving, and now goes around the outside of Colciaggio, who's still not back up to speed, having missed out the Variante Guzzi. But where is Fabrizio Giovanardi? There is Fabrice Valfish in the Honda, the red and white machine, moving around on the left-hand side of the picture, and there is Giovanardi right behind him. Gabriele Tarquini, 10th place at the moment, 8.4 seconds behind the then race leader Roberto Colciaggio. Zadra leads, the number 15 car run by the Max team of Paolo Zadra. But Nicola Marini, wow, David, a lap from back of the grid to second place, and now halfway around lap 2, he's pushing hard, but then they are long laps, as we mentioned earlier, and he's only got 9 of them to get to the front and stay there, so you can't really mess about.
No, not really. All through this weekend, there's been 3 cars that have been head and shoulders above the rest. It's the 2 Nord Auto Alphas and the Yas Honda, and you can see now on the second lap, and Larini's through into the lead. It was always going to happen. These guys were going to get to the front. I know at the beginning of the race they were playing down their chances, but there was nothing was going to stop these cars getting to the front. And even as we look now, we can see a bit further back, we can see 2 Hondas. Mr. Tarquini, who started right out of the pit lane, he's now into the whole bunch here at the back of this lot, and I would think he'll be following it through, and I would expect him to be up to third by the end of this 9-lap race.
Well, he's passed Roberto Colciaggio for the lead. Colciaggio's standing start lap was 2 minutes 8. How far back Larini was it took him another 3 seconds to get a full standing start lap done. He was 3 seconds further back from the start line than Colciaggio was in the beginning. But now, 1 minute 59.0. Roberto Colciaggio's second lap, 2 minutes 2. No wonder he's quick. Fabrice Valfish, 1:59.4. Now in third place, behind him Fabrizio Giovanardi, 1:59.7 in fourth place, and there is Gabriele Tarquini, who has now gone from 12th place to 8th place on lap 2, and still more positions to make up. So Nicola Larini leads, having started effectively at the back of the grid, bar 3 or 4 cars that started 4, in fact, from the pit lane, now leads the race. 2 laps of the 9 are completed, and they are out of the second of the Variantes, the Roggia, and heading into the first of the Curva di Lesmo. There is the number 9 Conrero Alfa Romeo, the 2 white cars run by the Conrero team. Conrero, you may well know as a rally team from many years, and now taking up the racing challenge on an international or a European level at least, with their pair of Alfa Romeo 156s. That's Angelo Lanciolotti, and there you can see his teammate Enrico Toccacello, who did start from the pit lane and has found himself in trouble there at the Variante Guggia, the first corner after the long, fast Monza front straight. Gabriele Tarquini still motoring on strongly. He's ahead of Lanciolotti now, up into 5th place, picked up another 3 spots in half a lap there. Fabrizio Giovanardi is ahead of him, and Gio looking in the mirror because he's got Tarquini right behind him. In fact, he's in a Honda sandwich, the reverse of race 1, where Tarquini was in an Alfa sandwich, and Tarquini diving down the inside into the first of the Lesmos. Giovanardi's onboard camera shows us the Honda is safely through. In fact, it wasn't at all, was it? That was in the Parabolica. That's a pretty brave move under braking as well.
Yeah, you see Tarquini now is starting out of the pit lane, which is a long way behind the rest of the cars when they started, and he's picked up through the rest of the field. He's now past Giovanardi, and he's up into 4th place. His teammate, I'm pretty sure, will move over and not give him too hard a time, which will leave him with Cole Giorgio to get past. We've got the fast guys up the front now. We've got the first 3 we would expect with the 2 Alfas and Tarquini, and then Wallfish and Cole Giorgio would expect to be 4th and 5th. And I reckon by the end of the race it'll probably be that way around. Giovanardi seems to be struggling a little bit at the moment. I would expect him to be a little bit quicker than Cole Giorgio and moving forward a little bit. But more debris around the circuit. You see the marshal picking up a bumper belonging to somebody. And Wallfish doesn't look as though he's going to make life as easy as possible for Tarquini.
Yes, he's not playing the team game quite yet, is he? Tarquini's going to have to force his way through.
But he'll do that right now, I'm pretty sure. He'll be through at this next corner, as we can watch and see 2 cars. There we are. Yes, Tarquini is now through, and he's into 3rd place. But slowed Wallfish a little bit, and Giovanardi's right behind, knocking on the door, waiting for his chance to come through. So I reckon Tarquini, who's been the fastest man here all weekend in testing, he managed to repair the front end of that car. As you've seen earlier, it was a very big accident he did, and I was very sceptical as if he could repair such a massive dent in that car. But they've done it, and they've done it extremely well.
Well, there is where the red bumper came from. That's the number 12 Racing Box Audi of Sergio Sambataro, and he'd already lost it the previous lap in conflict with somebody.
We noticed back in when that car was spinning there and it started to accelerate very quickly, only the rear wheels were spinning and not the front wheels. Now Audis I thought were 4-wheel drive. Maybe we've got some way of disconnecting the front wheels for this super fast Monza circuit, I'm not too sure, but certainly it was giving something away there when an Audi was accelerating with only rear wheels.
And very good point, and one of our email correspondents asked us, are the Audis and the rear-wheel drive cars being penalised for having a nominally better traction system? Yes, they are indeed in terms of weight, and if I brought my rule book with me I could have told you exactly what they were. I think the Audis carry an extra 80 kilos in respect of their rear-wheel drive, four-wheel drive configuration as opposed to the front-wheel drive cars. Now if you disconnect it and have a two-wheel drive Audi, I don't know quite how the weight changes. I think you get back to being a front-wheel drive car if it's front-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive it's rear-wheel drive. But as David points out, stop talking Martin, Gabriele Tarquini has passed Roberto Colciaggio. Surprised not to see notification of a penalty for Colciaggio for straight lining the first chicane. Really would have thought they would have done that.
I think what happened when he went through there, he did slow up sufficient to let the car who was in front of him back in front of him and try and regain his position where he was. Some of the other cars we've seen in the GT racing earlier on were certainly going through the chicane and coming out the other side as fast as they could to try and gain a place. And it was those people that have been given the penalties, the 10-second stop-and-go penalties. He was playing the game by slowing down and trying to slot back into that right position.
So Nicola Larini, fastest lap of the race, now going to Tarquini as he goes quicker even than the Larini. And we're being given notice of a penalty for car number 12, which is the Audi we just saw spinning, so no problem for Roberto Colciaggio. Now Fabrice Wallfisch perhaps he was just having a practice blocking attempt, seeing how wide a Jas Honda really could be made when Gabriele Tarquini, his teammate, came up behind, because where it really counts, of course, is whether he can hold up Giovanardi. But was that Giovanardi just easing past him there? We saw as we picked up the onboard picture.
No, we can just see him still in front. Yeah, and I think he'll stay there. Walfish has got a hang of this car. As the weekend has gone along, he's got better and better. He was certainly struggling on the first day when it was really wet around here, but he's picked his speed up as the whole weekend gone along, and he's right up there now, dicing with the no doubt Alphas, and doing an excellent job for his first time in a Super Touring car.
So Nicola Larini leads them across the line, 1.654 seconds ahead of Gabriele Tarquini. Roberto Colciaggio in third, Fabrice Walfish in fourth. There is Tarquini with the headlights on. His last lap, 56.5, as opposed to a 156.5, 156.5 for Larini, 156.0 for Tarquini. So Tarquini not quite on his lap record pace yet, or still rather, but just a tenth of a second away, and still pushing very hard. Now, at what stage will Tarquini's tyres start to show the efforts of all that hard work, and will it be harder for him than for Larini, who has also come pretty much through the back of through the whole field?
I think it's pretty much the same for both of them. They've both been pushing hard right from the very beginning, having to start at the back of the grid. As long as they can keep off the dirty part of the circuit, not pick up any rubber on the rear of the car in order to make the rear very slippy, then I'm sure the tyres will be very consistent. These tyres, they've all got exactly the same tyres from Michelin, so there's no advantage for anyone in the tyre stakes.
Nicola Larini, winner of race 1 in the Euro Super Touring Championship at Monza, leads race 2 from Gabriele Tarquini. Now, this is the situation they were in when Tarquini spun off the track in the high-speed Lesmos. No, it wasn't, in fact, it was in the Ascari chicane in race 1. Tarquini's car heavily damaged. It's been repaired. He started from the pit lane and has now driven through the field, as have all these front runners who started well back, because the grid for the second race was determined by the finishing order of the first race, only starting in reverse order of speed. They've dispensed with the slower cars, most of whom are drivers in the amateur category, which is a separate point scoring opportunity within the main championship. And no surprise really with not just the calibre of the cars, but the calibre of the drivers here as well. Yeah, even non-experienced touring car men like F3000 ace Fabrice Walfish tries to get past Roberto Colciaggio. David throws his hands up in disgust that he wasn't keeping his eye on the main game, which is keeping Fabrizio Giovanardi behind. But in the end, somehow David scrabbled through the Variante Goodyear there and held off Giovanardi as well.
He really made life very difficult for himself, because when he came up the straight, he dived to the wrong side. To try and go around the outside into such a tight chicane is a real nightmare, and he left the door wide open for Giovanardi to try and dive up the inside, and he just didn't have his eye on the ball, as you said. He's been a bit slow through that chicane there, the second chicane, and that's now left Giovanardi a bit of space, and he's through the inside. So Walfish, in his efforts to try and get past Colciaggio, has managed to lose a place, and he's learning. I mean, this is his first race weekend in the Super Touring Championship, and it is a very tough championship. People say you've got to be very quick to be in this. People come from Formula 3000, we've seen people come from Formula 1 before into Super Touring, and it's not as easy as you think it is. It is very, very difficult. He's discovering it's difficult. He made a small mistake, and now all of a sudden he's down another place.
Well, very much what he's been used to in Formula 3000 over the last seasons, where he's had 3 years of racing, almost identical cars in almost identical conditions. Now, interesting there, Giovanardi looking down. He was smoking as he came onto the straight there. He's looking in the mirror, he's looking down, well, down by the gear lever at the transmission tunnel. Now, I wasn't sure whether that was oil smoke or maybe just tyre rub, but I don't know, did that look to you like he was checking something?
He could be checking something. Down there in the centre of the car is the anti-roll bars. These cars have got adjustable anti-roll bars, and he can adjust it from the centre of the car. Here we see the lead for the race, and you can see Tarquini's done it right. He's gone down the inside, not the outside. That's the correct way to do it. And you can hear the cheer from the crowd as he goes through. So he's come from the back, even from the pit lane he's come to now to lead this race. That's a fantastic drive. He's done superb times, and his times are just so much quicker. 0.8 of a second quicker on the last lap round there than what Larini was. So if he can get himself a bit of a gap, he will simply pull away from Larini and make this race all his own. But remember, it's a very short race. It's only 9 laps. We've now completed 7 of them. So there's only 2 laps to go, including this one.
So 155.6 compared to 156.4 the last lap for Tarquini versus Larini. That's why he's caught him. That's why he's been able to pass him. And that's why, frankly, all things being equal, he should be able to drive away. All he's got to be doing is to be careful of those curbs. And David's shaking his head. He is using a lot of curb, but then Larini is right behind him, benefiting a fraction from the hole in the air that Tarquini's car is passing, which allows Larini's Alfa to travel marginally quicker and, in fact, helps slow down Tarquini's car in a straight line, whereas the reverse was true when Tarquini was drafting Larini, when the quicker Honda was going even quicker in comparison to the Alfa Romeo. But not sure that Larini's going to be able to fight back. He may well hang on there, David, within a car length or two in that little hole in the air, in that bubble, but well, he hasn't got a last lap slingshot opportunity left, has he? Because only the parabolica, and that's not really a great place for making a pass.
No, he's. You can see now Tarquini's already stretching that lead just a little bit. Tarquini's still got his headlights on. He had them on all the way through the field to let people know he was coming. Now he's got to the front. It'd be a good idea if he switched them off. Then the alternator would have to do a little bit less work, and the engine would be probably about 1 brake horsepower more efficient. But he's out there giving what he can. He's watching his mirrors, I'm sure, to make sure Larini doesn't come back at him at any point. But he's driving a very good race. He's using all the circuit, as we've seen slightly earlier. He's using every curb, every inch of the curb, right up to the gravel traps. He's trying his hardest. He knows this circuit extremely well. This is one of his favourite places. And I'm sure he was absolutely distraught at the mistake earlier on when he threw it into the barrier and destroyed the front. And probably like me, he thought it couldn't be repaired in time. But the guys at Yas have done a fantastic job putting it all back together. And you can see him now. He's out there through that second chicane and doing a fantastic job. He's easing himself away all the time from Larini.
Lap 9 of line 9 around Monza. Gabriele Tarquini leads Nicola Larini in the second Euro STC race of this 2001 championship. The Honda, fastest in practice, an uncharacteristic miscue by Tarquini, dropping it into the barriers in race 1. He failed to finish there, didn't score anything, but he will now take victory. Nicola Larini, winner in the first race, will take second place, all other things being equal, in his Nordauto run Alfa Romeo. And again, as last year, it'll be Honda versus Alfa all the way through. Just very quickly, David, Richard Lomax of Newport, South Wales wanted to know what kind of horsepower are these cars developing in super touring, guys?
They're about 300 horsepower, just a fraction over depending on who you talk to and what they say.
So finally, 300 brake horsepower of Honda power, probably a fraction more than the Alfa, it would seem, because the Honda is very quick indeed. Takes Gabriele Tarquini to victory in the second race of the opening round of the European Super Touring Car Championship for 2001. Nicola Larini on the podium for the second time. First place and second place for him. Roberto Colciaggio takes third in his Audi. Fabrizio Giovanardi, second in race 1, will take fourth place. And Fabrice Valfish, fifth place for him. The ex-Formula 3000 man, I think, doing a good job keeping his nose clean and learning, I'm sure, an awful lot in this opening race of the Euro STC. So in sixth place, coming across the line some 20 seconds back, is the number 18 Nissan, Sandro Sardelli. He's another one of the amateur drivers, in fact the first of the amateur drivers across the line, and the rest of them streaming in. And an interesting concept to start the second race in reverse order of the first, but it didn't seem to separate the fast guys from the slow guys for too long. They worked their way through very quickly indeed. And in the end, the speed of qualifying pretty much being reflected in the result here in this second race, despite reversing the grid. And the Eurosport Honda team will be very happy indeed with their performance between races, I think, there, as much as they are with Tarquini's in race 2.
Yes, they've done a phenomenal job to get that car put back together. As we've seen earlier, they had hit that tyre wall very hard indeed and really smashed the front of it. So they worked with a lot of spares and a lot of bits and pieces to put it all back together. Fantastic to come from the pit lane all the way through to the front and lead the race.
Gabriele Tarquini wins race 2 at Monza in the European Super Touring Car Championship. The man who was drafted in by the Honda squad to help Peter Cox in his battle with the Alfa Romeos in last year's Euro STC, which we saw live on Eurosport. And again this year on Eurosport, the Euro STC forming part of our Super Racing Weekend. And not just the Super Tours, but also the Super Production cars. We'll be seeing them on track in just a moment. And David, that brings us back to a number of correspondents who brought in the questions about the change in touring car racing that's sweeping through Europe at the moment. The British Touring Car Championship has gone away from a 2-litre Super Touring formula, as we've seen these cars here, towards a sort of super-duper Group N version, an almost production saloon. In fact, there's a slightly mixed field. We've got the super production cars here, which really are super Group N cars, much more related to showroom cars than the Super Tourers. There are 2 or 3 different sets of regulations sort of manoeuvring around in saloon car racing in Europe to try and be accepted as the Europe-wide standard by the FIA. Now, a lot of machinations behind the scene, but super production seems at the moment to be gaining a little bit of headway.
I think it is. They had to change the Super Touring from what it was. It was just got too expensive. And all the different countries have put together different packages to try and move to that new Super Production series. And the FIA, the governing body, won't make their mind up as to which way to go. So they're simply sitting on the fence at the moment, waiting for to see which is the strongest series. And I would think they will sit and watch that, and whichever one is the strongest, that is the way they will make those rules. So we have those rules now in all the different countries and throughout Europe. But as you said, they're all slightly different. We have some rules here, and we will see the race fairly shortly. As to the super production race here we have in Europe, and it's very strong. There's a lot of manufacturers coming into it, and they're doing that throughout Europe in the different countries. And if we can get them all together in one place, then I'm sure we'll have a fantastic championship.
There's Gabriele Tarquini then, our winner.
Gabriele, you crashed this morning. You started from the pits, and yet you still won the race. That's amazing. How did you do that?
Yeah, it was amazing, because I start not last on the grid, but I start from the pits, so I lost more time, and I start really 15 seconds behind the leader. But was great. I think the traffic was not so bad. I think, I mean, this is the best track to be there, especially for me, because overtaking is not really difficult, but was great. It's never happened to me to start from the box and to win the race.
Does that make up for crashing this morning, that you're the winner?
Yeah, I lose a lot of points, especially because my car shows that in this track was the best car on the track, but like I said yesterday on the press conference, sometimes the best car don't win the race, and this is happened.
Congratulations, Gabriele.
Yes, congratulations indeed, and also I think we can't reiterate strongly enough how much of a part in that the Eurosport mechanics played, rebuilding the car between the races. Okay, they had the full length of the GT race and they wouldn't have done it probably in 20 minutes, but still Tarquini never started from the pits and won a race. Well, everybody else, I think, starting from the back, the fastest drivers, probably helped him in that endeavour. Otherwise, I'm sure he would have been top 6, maybe even top 4, but probably not able to rack up a maximum point score from that race. As it is, Nicola Larini is the championship leader with a win and a second place, and the Italian, who was runner-up third place in last year's championship, wasn't he, behind Peter Cox in the Honda, who was the runner-up, is currently leading the point standings for the Nord Auto Alpha team. We'll be seeing Peter Cox, last year's Super Touring Championship runner-up, in the Super Production race. The car's about to come out onto the grid for the final live race in this first Super Racing Weekend. So Gabriele Tarquini winning the first race for the second race, rather, of the first Super Touring weekend of the season, and the Super Tours as well as the Super Production cars will be part of the Eurosport Super Racing weekends throughout the season. We move next to Brno in the Czech Republic. That's round 2 of the series, but before we get there, to a very different setup.
Nicola Larini, you've had a first and a second place today, but you still look disappointed.
Yes, because lose the race at 2 laps to the end, it's not nice.
And but generally I'm in the leader in the championship, so this is important for the next races. And I can say just I don't have a fantastic engine, especially for this racetrack. For me, it was difficult to try to maintain the position. Was easy to win if I start in front with the normal rules, but I wasn't in the same level like Gabriele because he started from the pit and I was the last on the racetrack, so we were on the same level of starting grid. At the end, I had problems with the clutch. There was a problem in downshifting, but I'm happy to finish the race in any case.
You started from 16th and then you moved your way up into the lead. Were all the cars in front of you a problem?
There was a big catastrophe in second and the first Lesmo, and I tried to overtake everywhere. At the end, he was already, I think, in 5th position the first lap, so this means I did a good job.
Thank you, Nicola.
A big catastrophe for some drivers in the first Lesmos, that's for sure, but Larini kept his nose clean, as all the leaders knew they had to do as they worked their way up through the field of the reverse grid for race 2 in the European Super Touring Car Championship. And as he said, the win and second place score puts him firmly atop the championship. In second place will be his teammates, the reigning champion Fabrizio Giovanardi with a second and a 4th place. That will outscore Gabriele Raffinelli? Where did that come from? Tarquini's single win and 0 points from race 1. Well, the reports of the race being phoned home and faxed home from the grandstands and from the press room. Let's catch up now with Roberto Colciaggio.
2 third places on your home track. You happy?
Yeah, I'm happy because there was too much different on the straight, and the Honda and the Alfa was a lot of quicker, but also if I make a little mistake on the first lap, that I was first on the braking point, but there was nothing to do because the Honda and the Alfa, they were really quicker.
This is your home track. Do you think that you and the Audi will be able to compete with the Alfa Romeo and the Honda on the other tracks?
Like I always say, this and the next one is the worst race for us because they are a quick race, and I hope I try to do my best every time. And did you see that you saw that the race, like Tarquini make the first race, always something happens, so we try to do the best, and let's see what's coming on.
Well done, Roberto, thank you.
So Colciaggio in the Alfa, living with it on these fast circuits, and Bruno, he figures, will be another one where the all-wheel drive system will not help and the weight will be a severe penalty. And David, on the high-speed blinds of Monza, you can't argue with that as a logical conclusion, can you?
No, it's right. Having seen this car and raced against it before with Roberto on long straights, he certainly does suffer, and we were able to pull away from him on long straights. But when it comes to the tighter corners, then yes, the four-wheel drive is tremendous. The braking is very good. Off a standing start, the car is very, very good. So there are good things for it as well.
Once more, the Italian national anthem rings out over the podium at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. This time for the Eurosport team and for driver Gabriele Tarquini, winner of race 2 in the European Super Touring Car Championship. Roberto Colciaggio, now Nicola Larini receive their trophies. And finally, Spider-Man Gabriele Tarquini the winner of an interesting second race, and that experiment will be continued throughout the season. The drivers a little bit wary of it before the start, but like all other races in rules in racing, you've just got to get on with it or not partake. And so that will be a regular feature of the Euro STC weekends. Race 1 in normal qualifying order, race 2 reverse decision from race 1. And with the time of the GT race to repair any damage from race 1 to race 2, none of the 10-minute turnarounds that we used to see in things like the German Touring Car Championship, it does give the field a chance to recover from a damaging race 1 if necessary, and still go out and compete, as Gabriele Tarquini has just proved here, to win the second race at Monza. Eurosport live at Monza for the opening Super Race Weekend, our brand new television package incorporating some of the best of Europe's sports car, single-seater and touring car action. We've seen the FIA GTs in action, we've seen the Formula Renault cars in action. Now it's the turn of super production cars.
Gianni Morbidelli on pole position. You confident for the first super production race of the season?
Well, we did a good start. We did a good job on the practice, and we hope to do the same on the race. Of course, we are very close with the other drivers, but we try to do our best, of course.
Thank you very much, Gianni.
Gianni Morbidelli, one of a slew of BMW 320i, the E46 shaped cars, who have been very impressive in this qualifying for the opening super production race of the European Championship. Peter Cox alongside the man who was runner-up in the Super Touring Championship last year, now driving the #1 BMW. Peter Cox of Holland, outside front row of the grid for him.
Peter, your qualifying times have been very close to Gianni Morbidelli's qualifying times. Do you think that you can beat him here in Italy?
Oh, for sure. That's why we're standing on the grid, you know. I mean, we're still a very young team with FIA Motorsport, and we have 2 cars in the top 3. So I think it's already not so bad. And I think the car is looking strong for the race. So I'm quite optimistic.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, Cox, of course, a single-seater racer, turned GT and sports car racer, turned super touring racer. Been racing in Britain in the last couple of years. And his young teammate, Norman Seaman, here in car number 2, will line up third. And Seaman, who started in single-seaters, moved into sports car racing, notably having a very good race for the pole team at the Nürburgring last year. And he is now part of the Italian BMW Bavaria Motorsport team. And as Peter Cox said, a brand new team set up for this championship, taking on the might of CBMI, who have been racing BMWs, the Italian team, for a large number of years, all the way through pretty much the genesis and evolution of the 3 Series. And the black and orange CBMI cars very, very well prepared as ever, and very quick indeed. So Norman Seaman on the inside of the second row of the grid, alongside him another BMW, Per Gunnar Andersson. And Andersson, one of a pair of BMWs run by Carli Motorsport.
Norman Simon here, third on the grid, just behind your teammate. It seems as though you have a very strong car.
Yes, I mean, we have a very strong car. We just started really with the car. We still have some little bit problem which we could improve from the qualifying to the round this morning. But we are very strong, and I hope that we can do something in the race today.
Do you think you could win?
I think everyone on the grid, or nearly everyone on the grid, can win, because Monza is always very difficult to pull away. You will see a big pile fighting for the lead, you know. So it's very difficult to say here who can win, who has not a chance.
Okay, good luck. Thank you, Norman.
Norman Seaman, one of the under-25 category drivers. Again, another point-scoring system within the championship. Doesn't give them any further lead in the championship, but there are 4 drivers in the under-25 category. Norman Seaman, Tobias Massini, who regular British fans will have seen in Britain's touring cars last year in the National Saloon Car Cup. He was racing a Honda Integra R. He's racing an Alfa Romeo 156 here, and a pair of Britons, James Hansen and Tom Ferrier, in BMWs. Ferrier, perversely, last year racing an Alfa 156 in the National Saloon Car Cup, so he moves into a BMW, and the two of them racing for Peter Briggs' Edenbridge Racing Team. So good to see the Edenbridge name back, and Peter Briggs adding yet another page of achievements to his comprehensive CV. Tommy Rustad here, run by the RGN Motorsport team from Britain, in a car you're pretty familiar with, David, this Nissan Primera. This is the very last one, I think, built in the death throes of Nissan Motorsport Europe, they were saying.
Yes, they were building it when I was still there, in actual fact, and it's a direct copy of a car that I raced at the Spa 24 Hours some 3 years ago. So it's a car we know really well. They know they've got a few problems with it. They know that they need to make the engine a bit quicker. They're certainly a long way down on straight line performance. But they're working well with the chassis. The chassis is working extremely well. Tommy was the Swedish touring car champion last year, so they've got a very competent driver in there to hurtle that car around. So it's the first non-BMW that's in there at the moment. And I'm sure that once the race starts, and as you heard Peter say early on, that it's a very fast circuit, there'll be a lot of slipstreaming, and no one will get away, and everyone will be hanging on to each other. And if Tommy can get onto the back of that grid, then he will be able to hang in there and make it an even more interesting race as the race goes along. But nice colours on these cars, and we hopefully will tell them apart.
Well, we were expecting to be away on commercial right now, but unfortunately a slight technical hitch back at base means that oh dear, we're going to have to stay live with you here from Monza. Never mind. Starting to cloud over a little bit, David, and that will, well, rob the track of any further warmth, perhaps. I don't think it'll cool down too much. Interesting that in the super production category, introduced to try and bring running costs down to a manageable level, they're using tyre warmers, which is something that even the GT cars don't use. Now, is that, not all the teams have got them, but certainly the better prepared teams have got tyre warmers. Is that something that's really strictly necessary in what is a heavier car than a Super Tourer on slightly less aggressive tyres? Do they really need that to keep tyre temperatures up?
I don't know why they're using them. Super Touring cars managed to get rid of them a couple of years ago, and I can't see no reason for having them at all. One of the reasons for having this class, as we said earlier, is to try and bring down the costs of what Super Touring has been in the past, and why you would expect to allow them to go out and buy new sets of tyre warmers. These are very expensive items to buy, and you have to buy a little generator to make them run, and or have the right amount of electricity. If you're in the garage, that's fine, but as we've seen early on when the cars came onto the grid, right beside the cars as they arrived was a little trolley with an engine and a generator on it in order to keep the tyres warm. When the cars came onto the grid with some old tyres, they would take them off on the grid and fit on the really warm ones, so that when the race starts they've got the warmest possible tyres. But like everyone else, you've got a warm-up lap. You can see the green flag being waved now, and that is the time when you go and warm your tyres up. You've got a whole lap round here in Monza. We've said a few times this weekend how long this circuit is, so there's plenty of time to get that heat into those tyres, and when you come back you've got another standing start. That'll put some more heat into the tyres, so you've got no problem when you get to the first corner. So it's an expense. I'm not sure why the organisers of this particular championship have allowed these tyre warmers in, but they are there, and the people that have read the regulations and have got a little bit more money than others, they've been out and they've got the tyres and warmers, and they're out there, and they'll have that little bit of an advantage at the moment, but it won't take long before everybody else has them.
Indeed, I think by the time we get into the first couple of corners, everybody will certainly be right up to the temperature of those with the tyre warmers, whether they have them or not. We just saw a quick shot of a brand new machine in racing terms, Ettore Bonaldi in the number 20 car. That's an Alfa 147, the new little Alfa hatchback, and we're used to seeing the 156s now. They've been racing those for, what, 4 years now, I think. And by saloon car standards, that must be getting pretty long in the tooth, the 156 model, but the new little 147 with its very distinctive 1960 style sunken grid. They're just going through behind James Hansen on the grid caption. Nice looking little car, slightly different sort of size really to the 3 Series and the 156s, but certainly good to see a bit of variety. The Alfa, of course, and the BMW, the predominant shapes here, but the Nissan Primera also producing a little bit of variety. And we are promised a Peugeot 306 GTI 6, which of course has been dominant in Super Group N racing, if you like, the National Saloon Car Cup in Britain during the last 12 months. So it'll be interesting to see if that appears and how it will be run in this European Championship. The super production field on its warm-up lap on the way round to the first start here at Monza. Tyre warmers to warm the tyres. David, nothing to keep the brakes warm. One of our email correspondents asked why the Volvo in the Super Touring class had very different front and rear wheels. It had discs basically across the rear wheels, flat discs. The answer?
The answer is they put discs on the rear wheels. The wheels are actually the same, but they cover the rear wheels up. It's an aerodynamic aid. It's something that actually helps more downforce in the rear of the car, used mainly by most people in qualifying, and then it became so highly used that it's now used all the time during the races as well. But it's purely an aerodynamic aid to help the downforce of the rear of the car. How it does that, I'm afraid you'll have to ask an aerodynamicist, but believe me, it does. I've tried it on cars and it definitely works.
Well, most of the benefit of having an alloy wheel on a racing car, of course, is saving weight, unsprung weight, that is detrimental to the handling of the car. One of the other things that the vanes do is draw air in to cool the brakes. Now, rear brakes on a Super Tourer, almost irrelevant. Therefore, if you blank off the wheels, it doesn't create so much turbulence and doesn't desperately badly affect the rear braking either.
The rear braking is so very small. In Super Touring cars, front-wheel drive cars, all the brakes are on the front. Unlike the rear-wheel drive cars like the BMWs we're looking at now, they've got reasonable sized brakes back and front, but Super Touring cars all on the front, nothing on the rear. If you look at an Audi, you'll never see them using the discs on the rear, and that's just the difference between front-wheel drive and the rest of the cars.
Ready to go for the opening round of the European Super Production Championship for 2001. On pole position, Gianni Morbidelli in the BMW. Peter Cox alongside him in the BMW. Norman Seaman and Per Gunnar Andersen on the second row of the grid in BMWs. And it's only Tommy Rustad's Nissan ahead of Duncan Heisman that breaks up the BMW hegemony of the first three rows. And Rustad in the pale blue and white machine diving around in the middle of the field. And look, this is the poleman, Gianni Morbidelli, down into third place at the moment. Could go further down. Dreadful start by Morbidelli into the first corner. Goes Norman Seaman from third on the grid. Behind him, the number 12 car, Per Gunnar Andersen. No, Seaman goes across the dirt there. So it was the number 1 car, Peter Cox, that led. Seaman goes across the dirt, but didn't short line the chicane. I don't think enough to be penalised for that. Per Gunnar Andersen in second place. Poleman Gianni Morbidelli in fourth place. Tommy Rustad down to 6th behind Duncan Heisman, and the Alfa Romeos following round, being led around by Luis Villamil. So it's the number 1 car, Peter Cox, out front. And the pole position man, Gianni Morbidelli, there in the CBME car. Look at that, the way he pulls up on the tail of Norman Seaman. Norman Seaman, the single-seater driver, as we saw from Fabrice Valpes, showing inexperience there through the second of the variantes, through the Roggia. And the very experienced front-wheel drive ace Gianni Morbidelli pulling up behind him, trying to make a move for third place as Peter Cox leads them out of the Lesmos onto the long fast back straight. Cox from Per Gunnar Andersen from second and fourth on the grid respectively. Then Norman Seaman still ahead of Gianni Morbidelli. Morbidelli has got Duncan Heisman, who is Per Gunnar Andersen's teammate behind him, and the car with the pink nose there, the white car, that's Tom Ferrier in his BMW, the youngster from Great Britain. In the middle of the field, battling with another of the CBME cars, that'll be Stefano Gabellini. On board with Morbidelli. Well, a dreadful start from the poleman, David, and that's really a very, very inexcusable sin for such an experienced driver.
It is, but you have to remember this is the first ever race for these cars, so unless someone had thought about it and done some practice starts before they arrived here, or even when they were here leaving the pits or something like that, then most of these people probably never have done a start in these cars. And Gianni, I don't know why, he should have known what to do, he should have tried it, he should have expected it, but he certainly made a major mistake at the start of this race. He just got eaten up alive as he went off the line. He just simply didn't launch it at all, either too few revs or he slipped a clutch or too much wheel spin, I'm not sure. But anyway, you see him now down in fourth place and he really is struggling there at the moment.
Battle ahead of him on the brakes, Norman Seaman and Per Gunnar Andersen, but there's contact there as Gianni Morbidelli was also being passed by Duncan Heisman. Morbidelli makes it through. That's Heisman. No, that must be Gunnar Andersen ahead, I think. Per Gunnar Andersen. Yes, Norman Seaman was the man who was off. Didn't hit anything hard, but he's at the back of the field, the number 2 car. Peter Cox leads then. I think Per Gunnar Andersen will still be in second place. Gianni Morbidelli in third. That's Heisman on the right-hand side, and it's Gunnar Andersen who gets across. Well, Seaman comes across his nose as they make contact, and Seaman is spun round, but I think, well, David, as a driver, well, you apportioned some blame there.
I think that was Heisman's doing. He was on the outside there, and he just simply turned the car into the rear of Simon's car, and that turned it round. It's an easy thing to do. It's an old trick that it's well known by some of the more experienced drivers. There we see the similar thing happening.
Tom Ferrier with the pink nose there, and that's Heisman and Anderson's teammate. The number 15 car is Gino Kennis, in fact.
He was really leaning on Tom very hard there. He simply came across on him. But these guys, you can see how close this racing is. It's close at the front. There's a little bit of a gap, and there's another 5 cars there, all battling it out, and very close indeed. This will make for some good racing throughout the field.
Second Edenbridge car there we saw just about to be passed as replay of Tom Ferrier. Incidentally, the other car, the black and orange CBME car, ex-Formula 3008's Paolo Ruberti. And he's having a look at the back of Tom Ferrier's car, and just 3 spots behind is James Hansen in his Edenbridge BMW, on board with Gianni Morbidelli. Now Morbidelli up to 3rd place at the moment. That's Per Gunnar Andersen ahead of him. Behind him is Duncan Heisman, the brother of Patrick Heisman, the multiple Porsche Super Cup champion. Morbidelli fighting a bit of understeer there, exactly where you don't need it, halfway through the Parabolica.
As you come out of there, I was saying earlier about using all the straight, and you can see these cars do. They're a little bit underpowered compared to big GG cars we were watching earlier, so they have to carry as much momentum through the corner as possible. And if you see how they did that, using every inch of the road, including the white line, everything else they can do, coming to the end of the straight, down through the gears, and braking as they turn into the first chicane.
Well, Heisman launches his 14 car over the curbs, goes inside his teammate, and the chance for Morbidelli, and Morbidelli saw it as well. He knew that there was a chance there to try and get inside Per Gunnar Andersen, but Andersen was blocking the road, and Morbidelli launched down the inside, but had to really check up firmly there, much more so than if he'd had racing line. Heisman on the left here, goes down the inside of Andersen, gets through. Andersen, though, gets a little tap, gets sideways. Morbidelli sees the chance to go in, but then, to avoid a major collision, he has to, I don't know, maybe he wasn't quite down enough gears there, just got caught out in the spirit of the moment and didn't have the chance to take advantage. But look at that, as you said, David, Tommy Rustad, once he gets with somebody, will have a chance. And I think a cone under the BMW there, smoking away. Yeah, there it is, spat out in the middle of the corner. Oh, blimey, Andersen there, all over the curbs in the Lesmo.
These cars now are really battling hard. The first car, Peter Cox, has disappeared into the distance. You can see the Andersen car and the Heisman car battling out at the front. They're slowing themselves up. Morbidelli's in there trying to find a way past. And because of all that, Tommy Rustad, who's got this Nissan, who's just that much slower on a straight line than what these other cars are, these BMWs, he's been able to tag onto the back of them. And he's just waiting for any one of these 3 to make a mistake, and he'll simply pick the places up as he goes along. He's an experienced racer, as is Morbidelli, and Morbidelli should know a little bit better and should have been able to pick that place up. He was nearly there when they made the mistake in front of him at the chicane, but as you said, probably a gear too high and wasn't able to accelerate out quick enough to be beside them in order to get it for the next corner. But here we've got this 4th-car train for 2nd place, and it's going to be ever so close. None of them are going to do anything too silly at the end of that straight coming into the Parabolica, but believe me, they all want to be really pushing hard as they come out here, using all of the road. You can see the back of the BMW in front just squirming around there, and they want to be as close as possible at this point to try and get a good tour down the straight. And if you can be really tight in behind there, you get that tour, and as you get to the end of the straight, you've got to pull out, and remember, not like Wallfish did in the Super Touring race, but pull out to the inside and then dive up the inside into the corner. Morbidelli can see he's just a little bit too far back to be able to do that. He's catching them on the brakes, but just far too far back to get anywhere near it.
Heisman in the middle of the road there, defending hard, wasn't he, in the number 14 car from his teammate, and that compromised his speed. You saw how Andersen closed right up in the chicane there, but Heisman in the middle of the road stayed ahead. Notice that they are just starting to shake off Tommy Rustad down the front straight, but now under braking and in through the chicane he's closed up, so certainly there's nothing wrong with the Nissan's handling, just the power-sapping Monza straights that are really killing him here. Well, Bertola's 156 gets pushed away. We just saw the 147 of Tori Bonaldi rocking it through the curbs, but Bertola and the Scuderia I'm not going to say it, in the Alpha 156 being pushed away, and that looks fairly much mechanical disappointment. Now, for Tommy Rustad, and as you were saying earlier, for Gianni Morbidelli, a chance to take advantage of some miscue between the first 2 in this group. I think there's very little chance of them running cleanly all the way to the end of this race.
I think so. The first 2 are teammates, and they should really work together to be able to try and pull away from the rest of them. If they do that, I'm sure they will drop the little blue Nissan off the back of this pack, but it's not going to happen. These guys want to win. These guys want to be in front of each other. Teammate or no teammate, they're going to work hard, and you've got Morbidelli there in the black car right behind. who's going to give them no rest whatsoever, and he's going to make life as difficult for them. So, you know, Anderson's got to watch his back, and he's going to try and get past Heisman, and it's going to be really difficult for him. Morbidelli's a little bit better. He's going to watch what's in front of him. I don't think down the straights he now needs to worry about Rustad at the end, because they're just pulling away to the straights, and when it comes under braking, Rustad can come back at them. But he's got to wait for a mistake. Hasn't got the power or the ability to actually drive past anyone at this moment in time.
Oh, a bobble there, yes, indeed, Anderson, and this time no mistakes from Morbidelli. Saw the drama happening ahead of him and dived past, had enough grip just to take a slightly tighter bite out of the Parabolica. At that stage, David, exiting the corner there, just letting the car take its head and run wide anyway, so he had a little bit of grip to spare there probably. So now he slots into third place between these two BMWs, and a chance for him to make an assault perhaps on Duncan Heisman. So Peter Cox leading by 5 seconds here, and chuckling up his sleeve as the four-way battle for second place continues behind him and is still well alive. Stay with us as we return live at Monza in a moment. Back live with the Euro Super Production Championship. First race at Monza, the 70-kilometre first race of the championship. We're looking here at the battle for second place. Second place is Duncan Heisman in the BMW. Third, Gianni Morbidelli there in the CBME BMW. Fourth place is Pedro Anderson in his BMW. And fifth place, Tommy Rustad. And Rustad in the Nissan Primera, moving well offline there, just as we picked up the action live again, David. What was that all about?
I can't work that out at all. I mean, he needs to be in behind these cars to try and get whatever slipstream he can get, unless he's got a cooling problem, in which case he's got to pull out to get as much air into the front of the car as possible to try and keep that engine cool. I do know that these engines run much better when they're cool. Running up at 90 to 100 degrees is not good for them. And while there's a little bit of overcast outside, it's still a nice day out there. You know, it's not a cold day or anything, so it'll be fairly warm for these guys out there. They're working very hard. These cars get very hot. So all I can think of is trying to get a little bit more air into the engine to try and keep it cool.
Peter Cox leading by now 6.2 seconds at the line. Last time there's his teammate Norman Seaman, and Peter Cox has the fastest lap of the race at 2:07.5. I noticed that Norman Seaman was down in the 2:07.89s in the last couple of laps. Seaman was nerfed off at the first corner and has been flying back up the order since. He's in 6th position, and that was him we saw using all the curves and a touch of shale as well as he exited the second of the Lesmos.
A car has been awarded 5 stars in the Euro NCAP crash
and you'll notice from some of the long shots, maybe the higher shots around the circuit, that a number of the BMWs particularly have got national colours on the roof. There you can see Morbidelli with the green, with the Euro, the white and the red Production Championship. First race at Monza, the 70-kilometre first race of the championship. We're looking here at the battle for second place. Peter Cox, second place is Duncan Heisman in the BMW colours on the top. There in the CBME BMW. Fourth place is Pedro Anderson in his BMW. Fifth place, Tommy Rustad, and Rustad in the Nissan Primera, moving well offline there, just as we picked up the action live again, David. What was that all about?
I can't work that out at all. I mean, he needs to be in behind these cars to try and get whatever slipstream he can get, unless he's got a cooling problem, in which case he's got to pull out to get as much air into the front of the car as possible to try and keep that engine cool. I do know that these engines run much better when they're cool. Running up at 90 to 100 degrees is not good for them. And while there's a little bit of overcast outside, it's still a nice day out there. You know, it's not a cold day or anything, so it'll be fairly warm for these guys out there. They're working very hard. These cars get very hot. So all I can think of is trying to get a little bit more air into the engine to try and keep it cool.
Keen to point out, leading by now, their cars to be doing all the front running. Last time there's his teammate for them to do so. It's actually because Peter Cox has the fastest lap of the race at 2:07.5 this car, and racing it already in last was down in the Production Championship. So in the last couple of laps, European Super nerfed off at the first corner with a well-sorted car, despite the fact that he didn't win in last year's championship in Germany. And a touch of shale as well as he exited in the European Super Production opening round. This is the number 5.
There's a number of other manufacturers looking to come into this championship, and some of them are so new, like the little Alfa Romeo we've seen earlier on. That was brand new this weekend, and it's had no testing time and no time to make it any quicker, so therefore it's down at the back of the grid. But there's a number of other manufacturers, I said earlier, they're looking to come into this championship, and during the year we will add to the championship. The first one to come along, as I said earlier, a little Peugeot 306 GTI that will arrive shortly in the championship, probably by the next round. And the championship will grow ever so quickly, I am sure about that, into something similar to what the Super Touring was, if not better. and I expect it to be better because it will be run by privateers and run by teams rather than run by manufacturers. So that's always good for the racing because you get so many more people involved when it is the teams who are running than the drivers rather than the actual manufacturers.
The onboard shot there, Johnny Morbidelli flagged by the BMW Italian with the throttle chasing it hopefully later on in the season. Perhaps even as the car starting to move around, running out of grip. Of course, Hansen's being supported by BMW GB. Aerodynamic turbulence of Duncan Heisman ahead of BMW because the tyres are now starting to get a little tired. It seems to be very cars that are doing all the front running. It's not because they're paying for them to do so. It's actually because they head out towards the road developing this car and racing it already in last year's German Super Production Championship. So they come to the grid for the first European Super Production Championship with a well-sorted car despite the fact that it didn't win in last year's championship in Germany. It is still very much second place. Hedman Anderson being shaken off now. He is just coming into shot.
There's a number of other manufacturers looking to come into this championship, and some of them are so new, like the little Alfa Romeo we've seen earlier on. It was brand new this weekend, and it's had no testing time and no time to make it any quicker, so therefore it's down at the back of the grid. But there's a number of other manufacturers, as I said earlier, they're looking to come into this championship, and during the year we will add to the championship. The first one to come along, as I said earlier, the little Peugeot 306 GTI, that will arrive shortly in the championship, probably by the next round, and the championship will grow ever so quickly. I am sure about that, into something similar to what the Super Touring was, if not better, and I expect it to be better because it will be run by privateers and run by teams rather than run by manufacturers. So that's always good for the racing because you get so many more people involved when it is the teams who are running and the drivers rather than the actual manufacturers.
The onboard shot there of Johnny Morbidelli from being able to settle into his rhythm with trying chasing and concentrating away from what he's doing.
I think what he's got to do now is just sit there and be as close as possible all the time, really to worry the guy all the time. And if he can sit there and worry him lap after lap after lap, and then on the last lap try and make his move and get there in order to take that position away from him. If he practices how he's going to do it, like this now, not quite expecting to dive in there as we were talking, having said he should sit there and wait, then that's what he should do towards the end of the race. If he can do that on the last lap and come out of there, then he can take that position and win. He obviously feels that he can take that position now and then pull away. I, on the other hand, think that maybe that might be slightly more difficult than he was anticipating, and that Mr. Heisman will give him as hard a time coming back. Why he's got the wipers there, I've got no idea at all.
Concentration, not used to the car he's racing. Exactly what you were saying earlier, this is the first race in these cars for most of these drivers, and there's by no reason at all for having slipped on the wipers by accident, not other than that he's trying to do something. But if we got that long shot behind our race that he was looking to change the brake balance or something, was there something down there that he might have been comfortably?
If he's been trying to adjust something inside the car, whatever it is, he's got the wrong switch to switch the wipers on. He's realised that where they were on the part of the windscreen was no good. He needs them either right down low, out of sight, or dead straight in order to have them as aerodynamically efficient as possible. So either you want them underneath the bonnet so the air doesn't get to them, or if they're above the bonnet, you want them dead straight up the windscreen so that when the air hits them, it does the least amount of damage to the airstream going over the top of the car. He's now managed to resettle down underneath the windscreen there. But certainly a bit confused there when he was working with the switches. I think what he's got to do now is just sit there and be as close as possible all the time, really to worry the guy all the time. And if he can sit there and worry him lap after lap after lap, and then on the last lap try and make his move and get there in order to take that position away from him. If he practices how he's going to do it, like this now, not quite expecting to dive in there, so maybe now his tyres have taken a bit of stick. That's what he should do towards the end of the race. If you do that on the last lap, you come out there, then he can take that position to win. One part of the tyre, he feels that he can take that position now and then work his way down, disintegrate from that point onwards. On the other hand, think that maybe that might be slightly more difficult than he was anticipating. Tommy's managed to step up the pace. Mr. Heisman will give him as hard a time in front of Anderson coming back. All the time he's got the wipers on. Simon is there Jackson all the time, and you can see him now in the background. He's so much closer than he was. And if these two keep fighting, then that other German BMW is going to be catching them up, and before the end of the race he's going to be in there trying to take the places away from them.
Is it possible maybe that he was looking to basically change the brake down and try and run at qualifying pace? Might have been trying to adjust.
He could have been trying to adjust something inside the car, whatever it is, he's got the wrong switch to switch the wipers on. He's realised that where they were on that part of the windscreen was no good. He needs them either right down low, out of sight, or dead straight in order to have them as aerodynamically efficient as possible. So you want them underneath the bonnet so the air doesn't get to them, or if they're above the bonnet you want them dead straight up the windscreen so that when the air hits them it does the least amount of damage to the airstream going over the top of the car. He's now managed to get them resettled down underneath the windscreen there, but certainly a bit confused there when he was working with the switches.
Look at that, having the two of them have slowed themselves up very unsettlingly there, and Norman Seaman now ready to pounce. Tommy Rustad has ruined the fact that he hasn't got a blue and white emblem on the front of his car. The picture gets ahead
I'm sure he would like the power that's in there, but he likes the chassis that he's got at this moment in time. He's working very hard. He made a mistake there trying to go around the outside of the middle chicane. He needed to be able to come really hard behind and the laps and make the best use of it. But he's slowed himself up so much now that Norman's right in there behind can very shortly work its way down, disintegrate from that point onwards. And maybe that's affecting him now, and Tommy's managed to step up the pace and get past him. So Tommy's now in front of Anderson, but all the time in the background, Simon's there catching them all the time. You can see him now in the background, he's so much closer than he was. If these two keep fighting, then that other German BMW is going to be catching them up, and before the end of the race he's going to be in there trying to take the places away from them.
In third place, Norman Seaman has had nothing to do except to basically keep his head down and try and run at qualifying pace. Norman Seaman has Tommy Rustad to try and get himself up into whatever high positions he can manage. He's currently in sixth position, down into sixth position, safe from behind Rustad because of these guys ahead of him. And look at this, you can see the next BMW behind him is 11 seconds. Tommy Rustad's Nissan being able to demonstrated there. Anderson got the toe, got a good run through the parabolic. The two Edenbridge cars running trying to go around the outside as Anderson got very deep there into the first chicane coming on straight, giving him the opportunity or sniff of it. Prolonged dust-up with the two of them have slowed themselves up very noticeably there, and Norman Seaman now ready to pounce here at Johnny Rustad. Must be ruining the fact that he hasn't got a blue and white emblem on the front of his car.
I'm sure he would like the power that's in there, but he likes the chassis that he's got at this moment in time. He's working very hard. He made a mistake there, tried to go around the outside of the middle of the chicane. He needed to be able to come out right behind and turn around and disappear off the gravel trap, but they've slowed themselves up so much now that cars are still going there behind, and you can see very shortly now, the long way back now, you can see the other three cars, but they're now out of this battle altogether.
And exiting the second Lesmo, Duncan Heisman comfortably and with a big advantage now, up to 7.5 seconds at the end of last lap in this opening race in the Euro Super Production Championship in 2001. We've seen what happens when drivers get in his BMW, very obstructed with each other, completing touring car races across the planet. It just turns into carnage for everybody. And Duncan Heisman in third place. But just fair, I think, is what they're aiming for here, and that was certainly then Heisman Anderson, Norman Seaman against Tommy Rustad. So Norman Seaman got the job done on realising the dangers of contact and avoiding it, and Heisman going down into sixth position. Safe from behind Tommy Rustad because Paolo Roberti, the ex-Formula 3000 driver, in the next BMW behind him is 11 seconds from his fastest lap pace on lap 3, where he was breaking away from his four-way battle behind him. In fact, so the two Edenbridge cars seen running cars in 10th and 11th place, Tom Ferrier and James Hansen. And Ferrier coming off slightly working up the back of the car ahead of him there as he jumped out at the last moment under braking. Paolo Roberti,
he's not giving up, he's trying everything he can to get past this car. He's really worrying the car in front, and that's what he needs to do. The more pressure he can put Heisman under, the more likely Heisman is to make a mistake, and he'll simply pick up that position, and if he makes a big enough mistake, he'll pick it up with a nice little lead so that Heisman won't be able to come back to him. But he's pushing it all the way forward at the time. Gianni went down the inside, they were going to turn, one of them were going to turn around and disappear off the gravel trap, but they managed to hang on there, and both cars are still going, and you can see in the background, a long way back now, you can see the other three cars, but they're now out of this battle altogether.
And exiting the second Lesmo, Duncan Heisman just gave another wave to Gianni Morbidelli, which was, I think, a combination of a few seasons, thanks for not having us both 3 or 4 years ago. I think they're also trying to get him to the Winston Cup series required in touring car racing. We've seen what happens when drivers get for most Europeans for many years obstructed with each other on the last lap touring car races across the planet. It just turns into carnage for everybody. And this one, I think, David, will be in question until the exit of the parabolic, I think, is what they're aiming for here, and that was certainly...
that's a possibility. He's really pushing hard, the two of them. You can see them as they came out of the second of the two Lesmo curve, right over the curve onto the gravel trap there, as much as they can do, and now coming to the Ascari chicane. This is the last chicane before the back straight, all the way down this back straight into the parabolic. Remember earlier on we've seen Gianni Morbidelli, follow him down here and then pull out at the last minute and dive down the inside. Now you can see it's not going to happen because he's sticking to the right-hand side of the circuit. Is Heisman trying to make sure that doesn't happen, so Morbidelli has to go the long way around if he's going to go anywhere at all. That won't work going into the parabolic. So if he sets himself up well, he might be able to try and slingshot himself out. But in the meantime, he's trying everything he can to get past this car. He's really worrying the car in front. And that's what he needs to do. The more pressure he can put Heisman under, the more likely Heisman is to make a mistake, and he'll simply pick up that position. And if he makes a big enough mistake, they'll pick it up with a nice little lead so that Heisman won't be able to come back to him. But he's pushing it all the way forward at the time.
Norman Siemens, Morbidelli is not a giver up, but that's for sure. Duncan Heisman seems to have got this nicely under control. Been racing in the Dutch Touring Car Championship seamlessly past Tommy Rustad and Per Gunnar Andersen Porsche Racing as well. Been looking to try breaking to the sports car, the TT market for the brand Duncan Heisman, Italian-based few seasons. At one stage, 3 or 4 years ago, was also trying to get into the Winston Cup Series, but the new team has normally been very much a place all for most Europeans for many years. Second place on the last lap, and no doubting that he's going to finish his car blows up, in fifth place ahead of this David will be in question until the exit of the parabolic. Was always the man even after that to take the
that's a possibility. He's really pushing hard. The two of them, you can see them as they came out to the second of the two lesbian curves, right over the curb onto the gravel trap there, as much as they can do. They're now coming to the Ascari chicane. This is the last chicane before the back straight, all the way down this back straight into the parabolic. Remember earlier on we've seen Gianni Morbidelli follow him down here and then pull out to the last minute and dive down the inside. Now you can see it's not going to happen because he's sticking to the right-hand side of the circuit. Is Heisman trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So Morbidelli has to go the long way around if he's going to go anywhere at all. That won't work going into the parabolic. So if he sets himself up well, he might be able to try and slingshot himself out. But in the meantime, coming up to take the checkered flag here for the first race, and this is Peter Cox.
Peter Cox wins the opening Super Production Championship race here at Monza. So Peter Cox leads the round. He made his move early, but he showed his hand Sunday to Duncan Heisman. Eurosport Super Racing Weekend trying to surprise by our viewers. They hope Norman Siemens storming the recovery drives on Saturdays and on Sundays. We were watching that battle for seconds. Siemens was slicing his way seamlessly past Tommy Rustad and Per Gunnar Andersen on the last lap today and yesterday for qualifying and for the Formula Renault race to enjoy it. If you're sitting there watching saying, oh, that might be quite fun to go and see it, the next race is on April the 16th, the fortnight from today. Renault in the Czech Republic, second place, Gianni Morbidelli third on the 1st of May, and to Silverstone, they have the British Grand Prix on May 13th of Tommy Rustad, and Rustad is always the man most likely to take the battle to the BMW, FIA GT cars and all the others in action. Silverstone is the place to be. Zolder, Belgium, made the 20th power sapping Zolder to be able to really mix it with the big boys. Accidentally Belarus he does one of the first that could be a very interesting race. 1st of July will be at the Hungaroring outside of Budapest. So those are the top half dozen. Paolo Berti in 7th place in the Spa 24 hours. 10th and 11th on August the 4th and 5th that weekend. That's not part of the Super Racing Weekend. The Super Production cars will certainly be there, scoring in the under 25 category won by Norman Siemens in 4th place. Trim at the A1 Ring on August the 26th in Austria. If you're watching in Germany, the Nürburgring, September the 9th is the date for you. We're going to Jarama in Spain on September the 30th. If you want to make a late, Peter Cox leads the round the final in the sunshine in a jam-packed Sunday at Atlantic Coast of Portugal. Super Racing Weekend trying to offer our viewers a helter-skelter ride through the various categories on Saturdays and on Sundays. So there we are, first Super Racing Weekend at Monza, and a large number have come here for Peter Cox in the last race of the afternoon. Sunshine to Monza today and yesterday for qualifying and for the Formula Renault race to enjoy it. And if you're sitting there watching saying, oh, that might be quite fun to go and see it, the next race is on April the 16th, a fortnight from today, at Brno in the Czech Republic. We're coming to
Peter,
France, to Manicourt on the 1st of May, and to Silverstone, the home of the British Grand Prix on May the 13th.
No, it was all happening at the start.
5 weeks,
and as
6 weeks
lost,
away from now, you want to get a chance to see the FIA GT cars and all the others in action. Silverstone is the place to be. Zolder in Belgium, May the 20th.
So I was really pleased, and
in Belgium still,
I think it was an exciting race.
Accidentally Belarus Rus, as one of the Eurosport webpage reports had it.
I'm very happy for Ravalia Motorsport and especially Roberto Ravalia and all the people also from Schnitzer who did a fantastic car. And people maybe say, he was too far in front, but really they held each other up so badly that I could just go, I didn't do anything special, I think.
Thank you very much and well done.
Back in Super Racing Weekend European touring car racing, Roberto Ravalia running in Austria. You're watching in Germany the Nürburgring September the 9th is the date for you. We're going to Harada in Spain on September the 30th. He wants to make a late out nice and early, but he did have a sunshine comfortable and why not take it to the rest of the championship is going to be half as kind to the finals once we get starting at another fabulous time. It will be a tight field weekend calendar. Initial break and that allows him to really build his advantage. Ends in victory for Peter Cox in the last race of the afternoon.
Congratulations.
And let's hear from him now.
Well, it was really a hard fight. I've done a lot of races, but this one was a really hard one. Okay, Gianni is very experienced, and we had some problems this morning coming up on the rear differential, and we tried something else on the setup to get the car better around the Parabolica corner.
You made that look very easy.
And,
was it as easy as it looked?
But it was really hard.
No, it was all happening at the start. And as I lost, I think, the championship last year on the start. I think I wanted to do a little bit better, and with this car you can have a very good start. I saw from last year with the BMW, so I was really pleased, and I think it was an exciting race behind me, and I was fine with that, so I was happy. I'm very happy for Ravalia Motorsport, and especially Roberto Ravalia and all the people also from Schnitzer who did a fantastic car.
Well done.
And people maybe say, he was too far in front, but really they held each other up so badly that I could just go, I didn't do anything special.
Anyway, we was not fast enough. I think it was quite hard anyway
touring car race. Roberto Ravalia running the team to victory on their first time out. Schnitzer built cars, well, they're never going to be slow, are they? David Leslie and Peter Cox. Yes, he sorted it out nice and early, but he did have a fairly comfortable cruise to victory. I doubt that the rest of the championship is going to be half as kind to him. I should think once we get, well, starting at Bruno, then it will be a tighter field. Cox made the initial break, and that allowed him to really build his advantage.
Every time that we don't, we are not.
Congratulations. How do you feel?
We did a good battle, and
it was really a hard fight. I've done a lot of races, but this one was a really hard one.
Well done, Gianni.
Okay, Gianni is very experienced, and we had some problems this morning coming up on the rear differential,
and I think those cars have produced a very, very impressive first race. If they can continue that kind of variety of action through the championship, then register my vote for Super Production as the pan-European saloon car racing formula right here and right now.
I think it will be. I think in the future more manufacturers will come into it and we'll get bigger and bigger. We'll have so many more cars out there. And what a good entry. This is the first ever race. And we've got 19 cars out there. So it can only get better. And as you've seen from the racing is close, the racing is good. And so far the racing is very clean. If you can keep it that way, we'll have some extremely exciting racing here on Eurosport. And it'll make for enjoyment for everyone, whether you're there at the circuit watching it or whether you're here with us watching on TV.
Final question from Ryan Dobson in Newport, South Wales. Many thanks again to everybody who's emailed in. He says, why is the new shape BMW 3 Series in the Super Production but not in Super Touring? The new model will be a lot more competitive, he says, surely against the Alps and Hondas, but the old one will be more aerodynamic. Yes, it would. The simple fact of it is that Super Tourists are past their sell-by dates that are just being used for the final championship. The future is bright. The future is Super Production.
Battles in the race with Hagen Anderson
and let's hope for you and for us, the Super is Eurosport. The future is Eurosport's Super Racing Weekend. Thank you very much indeed once more to the voice of reason, David Leslie, for being alongside, being educating and informative throughout the weekend. From David, from me, Martin Haven, and from our many production staff here, I hope you have enjoyed our first of 10 Super Racing Weekends. Join us in a fortnight's time once more. David Leslie, for all the lack of slick tyres, sequential gearboxes and stuff. I think those cars have produced a very, very impressive first race. If they can continue that kind of variety of action have through the championship. To look forward to register my vote for Super Production. We've got live kart racing from every round of the championship. Right here and right now. Of the Winston Cup races on Eurosport.
Will come into it and will get bigger and bigger. We'll have so many more cars out there. We've already got a good entry. This is the first ever race. And we've got 19 cars out there. So it can only get better. And as you've seen from the racing is close, the racing is good. And so far the racing is very clean. If we can keep it that way, we'll have some extremely exciting racing here on Eurosport. And it'll make for enjoyment for everyone, whether you're there at the circuit watching it or whether you're here with us watching on TV.
Final question from Ryan Dotson in News. Many thanks again to everybody who's emailed in. He said the start's letting down. BMW 3 Series not in the Super Production, but not in Super Touring. The newer model will be a lot more competitive, he says, surely against the Alphas and Hondas than the old one, being more aerodynamic. Yes, it would. The simple fact of it is that Super Tourers are past their sell-by dates that are just being used for the final championship. The future is bright. The future is Super Production.
Without doubt.
And let's hope for you and for us, the Super is Eurosport's, the future is Eurosport's Super Racing Weekend. Thank you very much indeed once more to the voice of reason, David Leslie, for being alongside, being educating and informative throughout the weekend. From David, from me, Martin Haven, and from our many production staff here, I hope you have enjoyed our first of 10 Super Racing Weekends. Join us in a fortnight's time once more when we will be bringing you all the action from Brno in the Czech Republic. So, Eurosport's podium finishes from the first Super Production round of the Formula 3000 yesterday. You'll have plenty more to look forward to Duncan Heisman and season Gianni. We've got live kart racing from every round of the championship. In the background, you can see Winston Cup races on Eurosport in the shades. We've got more motorsport than you can shake a stick at. And it's half as exciting as Monza, then we're in for a breathless, and he will be as happy as very entertaining. Thank you very much indeed for all your interest, all your emails, all your correspondence. I will reply to every one of you during the next week. Sorry for not being able to do it while we're live on air. Thank you again to David Leslie and all our colleagues here on site. And thank you most of all to you for watching. Do continue to give us your feedback on the Super Racing Weekend. He said, give us your ideas for making them better. Super Touring time getting rid of me. Until the next time out, the start's letting down. For me, Martin Haven, not in the BMW this time. It's goodbye. Finishes from the first Super Production round of the European Championship. Peter Cox, the winner, from Duncan Heisman and Gianni Morbidelli, and what a great race they put up there. In the background you can see Roberto Ravaglia looking cool and suave as ever in the shades, the team owner of the cars that finished first and fourth, first time out of the box. And he will be as happy
Super
as
Racing
Peter Cox.
Weekend.
Well, thank you very much indeed for all your interest, all your emails, all your correspondence. I will reply to each and every one of you